Clara Hale had everything, except the one thing money couldn't buy. When the Ice Queen CEO of Hale Industries found herself trapped in a steel box between floors, gasping for air in designer heels, she never imagined the maintenance man's voice through the intercom would shatter her perfectly controlled world. "I don't have a husband," she would confess weeks later in a parking garage, her voice trembling. "Can I have a date with you? But before we get there, let me take you back to where it all began. And please, comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels." The morning of Tuesday, March 14th, started like every other morning in Clara Hale's meticulously ordered life. Her alarm pierced the silence of her penthouse at exactly 5:47 a.m. Not 5:45, not 5:50, but 5:47, because that gave her precisely 13 minutes to complete her morning routine before her first virtual meeting at 6:00. Clara didn't believe in wasted time. Time was money, and money was the only language she spoke fluently. She moved through her apartment like a ghost haunting her own life. Sleek, efficient, untouchable. The space was decorated in shades of white and chrome, everything sharp angles and cold surfaces. No photographs cluttered the shelves, no warm blankets draped over the furniture. Even her coffee maker was a sterile, German-engineered machine that produced the same perfect espresso every single morning, without variation, without personality, without soul. Clara was 32 years old and had built Hale Industries from a struggling family business into a multi-billion-dollar empire in just 7 years. Forbes called her the Ice Queen of Tech. Business Insider dubbed her the CEO who never smiles. She wore these titles like armor, never letting anyone see that sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, she wondered if the cold that surrounded her had finally frozen something vital inside her chest. By 7:15 a.m., Clara was stepping into her private elevator on the ground floor of the Hale Industries Tower, a gleaming monument of glass and steel that dominated the Chicago skyline. Her security detail had already swept the building. Her assistant had already uploaded her schedule to 3 different devices. Her driver was already circling the block for her evening departure. Everything moved like clockwork because Clara demanded nothing less than perfection. The elevator doors slid shut with their usual whisper-quiet efficiency. Clara pressed the button for the 48th floor, where her corner office overlooked Lake Michigan like a throne room surveying a kingdom. She was already mentally preparing for her 7:30 conference call with the Tokyo office when the elevator jolted violently. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Clara's hand shot out to grip the railing as the elevator car shuddered and groaned, metal scraping against metal in a sound that made her teeth ache. Then everything went still. The emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow that made Clara think of blood and sacrifice and all the nightmares she'd locked away in childhood. She pressed the button for the 48th floor again. Nothing. She pressed the button for the lobby. Nothing. She pressed the emergency call button, and a dial tone hummed through the speaker, but no voice answered. Clara Hale, who controlled boardrooms and commanded respect from senators and CEOs twice her age, felt her carefully constructed control begin to crack. The elevator was small. Suddenly, unbearably small. The walls seemed to press inward, and Clara realized with growing horror that her breathing was coming faster, shallower. Her chest tightened, her vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Somewhere in the rational part of her brain, she recognized the symptoms of a panic attack, but recognition didn't make it stop. She was trapped. Trapped in a steel box suspended God knew how many feet above the ground, and nobody knew she was here, and the emergency button wasn't working, and she couldn't breathe. Couldn't... "Ms. Hale!" A voice crackled through the intercom, cutting through her spiraling thoughts like a lifeline. "Ms. Hale, can you hear me?" Clara lunged for the call button, pressing it with shaking fingers. Yes, I'm here. The elevator. It stopped. The lights. I know. We've got you on the monitors. My name's Ryan. I'm with maintenance. Just sit tight, okay? We're going to get you out of there." The voice was calm, steady. It had the kind of warmth that Clara hadn't heard in years, maybe ever. It reminded her of hot chocolate on winter mornings when she was a child, before her father died and left her mother to run the company into the ground, before Clara had to grow up too fast and learn that warmth was a luxury she couldn't afford. "How long?" Clara asked, hating the way her voice shook. "How long until you can get me out?" I need to assess the situation first. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Clara forced herself to focus, to push down the panic that kept trying to claw its way up her throat. The elevator jolted. The lights went out. I heard metal grinding. Then it stopped. Okay, that's good. Did you feel the elevator drop at all? I don't know. Maybe. It happened so fast. That's all right. I need you to do something for me, Miss Hale. I need you to take a deep breath, count to 4, hold it for 4, then exhale for 4. Can you do that? I don't need breathing exercises. I need you to get me out of here. I know. The voice remained patient, unruffled by her sharp tone. And I will. But first I need you calm so you can help me figure out what's going on. The camera system's down on your elevator, so you're my eyes in there. Breathe with me. In for 4. Clara wanted to argue, but something about the voice, about Ryan, made her comply. She breathed in slowly, counting in her head. Hold for 4. She held, feeling her heart rate begin to slow infinitesimally. Out for 4. She exhaled, and some of the tightness in her chest eased. Good. Again. They breathed together 3 more times, and Clara felt the edges of her panic begin to dull. She could think again. She could function. Better? Ryan asked. Better, Clara admitted grudgingly. Excellent. Now, I need you to look at the doors. Do you see any light coming through? Any gap at the top or bottom? Clara crouched down, grateful she'd chosen pants today instead of a skirt. She examined the doors in the dim red emergency lighting. There's a gap at the top, maybe 3 inches. I can see light from, I think it's the 32nd floor? 32, copy that. That's actually good news. You're aligned with a floor, which means we can work on getting those doors open manually. I'm heading up there now with my tools. I need you to stay away from the doors, okay? Stand in the back corner. Keep your hands clear. Wait, Clara said, surprised by her own urgency. Don't turn off the intercom. There was a pause. When Ryan spoke again, his voice was gentler. I won't. I'll keep talking to you the whole time. It's going to take me about 4 minutes to get up to 32. Tell me something. What were you doing before you got in the elevator this morning? Clara blinked, thrown by the question. What? Just talk to me. It'll help. What does a CEO do at 7 in the morning? I had a virtual meeting at 6 with our Singapore office. Then I reviewed the quarterly projections while drinking coffee. What kind of coffee? Does that matter? Humor me. We've got 4 minutes to fill. Clara found herself almost smiling despite the circumstances. Espresso, single origin, Ethiopian Yirgacheffe. I have a machine that... She stopped herself. Why am I telling you about my coffee maker? Because you're not thinking about being stuck in an elevator anymore, Ryan said, and Clara could hear the smile in his voice. See, you're doing great. What's the rest of your Tuesday look like? I have back-to-back meetings until 7 p.m. Conference call with Tokyo, lunch meeting with potential investors, quarterly review with the board, then a charity gala tonight that I'm supposed to... Clara stopped, a new wave of anxiety crashing over her. The gala. It starts at 8. I'm giving the keynote speech. If I'm not there... Hey, one thing at a time. Let's get you out of this elevator first, then we'll worry about your schedule. I'm in the stairwell now, 28, 29. The gala's not until tonight. We've got plenty of time. Clara pressed her back against the elevator wall, focusing on Ryan's voice as he counted floors. She realized she was listening for more than just his words. She was listening to the sound of his breathing, slightly labored from climbing stairs, completely human in a way that most of her interactions never were. 32, Ryan announced. I'm at the elevator doors now. I'm going to start working on getting them open. You'll hear some noise, maybe some grinding. That's normal. Just stay in that back corner for me. Okay, Clara said softly. The grinding started, metal on metal, the sound of something being forced. Clara winced but kept her eyes on the gap at the top of the doors. She saw shadows moving in the light, heard grunts of effort, heard what sounded like another voice asking something she couldn't make out. We're making progress, Ryan said. Whoever maintained this elevator last did a terrible job. These doors should open smoothly, but the tracks are gunked up with... Never mind, you don't need the details. Just know we're getting there. Do you do this often? Clara asked. Rescue people from elevators? More often than you'd think. Last month I pulled a guy out who'd been stuck for 3 hours. He'd eaten half his lunch and was working on the crossword puzzle by the time we got to him. 3 hours? Clara's voice pitched higher. But that was a completely different situation. Different elevator, different building, different problem. We're going to have you out way before that, I promise. Something about the certainty in his voice made Clara believe him. She wrapped her arms around herself and waited, counting her breaths the way he'd taught her, focusing on the sounds of rescue happening just beyond the doors. Almost there, Ryan said. Stand back just a little more. The doors lurched, groaned, then slowly, agonizingly slowly, began to part. Light flooded in, bright and startling after the dimness. Clara shielded her eyes, blinking against the glare. As her vision adjusted, she saw hands gripping the elevator doors, forcing them wider. Then she saw him. Ryan Cooper was not what she expected. Clara had imagined maintenance men as older, maybe running to fat, wearing stained coveralls and sporting unkempt beards. Ryan was maybe 35, with dark hair that curled slightly at his temples, and eyes the color of weathered denim. He wore navy work pants and a gray t-shirt with the Hale Industries maintenance logo on the chest, and his hands, the hands currently holding the elevator doors open, were scarred and calloused, but somehow beautiful in their capability. He was looking at her with concern and something else she couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or recognition, as if he'd been as invested in getting her out safely as she'd been in being rescued. Ms. Hale, he said, and his voice was the same as through the intercom, but richer, somehow, more real. Let's get you out of there. He extended a hand. Clara stared at it for a moment, at the scars across his knuckles, at the dusting of dark hair on his forearms, at the simple offered gesture of help. How long had it been since someone had offered her a hand? Really offered, not as a business formality or a photo opportunity, but as a genuine human connection. She took his hand. His grip was warm and strong and steady, and he pulled her easily up over the gap between the elevator floor and the building floor. For just a moment, Clara was close enough to smell him, soap and something mechanical, coffee and clean sweat. It was so different from the cologne of the men in her boardroom, so utterly unpretentious and real, that she felt dizzy. Or maybe that was still the panic attack. Easy, Ryan said, his hand moving to her elbow to steady her. You okay? Do you need to sit down? I'm fine, Clara said automatically. Then, more honestly, no. Maybe. I don't know. Ryan guided her to a bench in the hallway, one of those modern, uncomfortable things that Clara had approved in a design meeting years ago without ever considering that someone might actually need to sit on it. He crouched in front of her, those blue-gray eyes searching her face with a level of attention that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. Take your time, he said. There's no rush. Behind him, another maintenance worker, a younger guy with red hair, was securing the elevator doors and speaking into a radio. Clara could hear fragments of conversation. Structural engineer. Full inspection. Probably out of service until... How long was I in there? Clara asked. Ryan checked his watch. About 22 minutes. 22 minutes. It had felt like hours. Clara looked at her own watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars, and saw that it was only 7:37. Her Tokyo call would be starting in her phone. She'd had her phone in her bag, hadn't she? Clara scrabbled for her purse, which had somehow ended up on the floor during the elevator incident. She pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls, 34 texts, and a string of increasingly frantic emails from her assistant. I need to... Clara started to stand, but Ryan's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Miss Hale, you just went through a traumatic experience. Maybe take 5 minutes before you jump back into work mode? Clara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine concern in his expression. Not the calculated concern of an employee worried about liability, but actual human empathy. It was so foreign to her world that she almost didn't recognize it. I don't have 5 minutes, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Then take 2, doctor's orders. You're not a doctor. No, but I am the guy who just spent 22 minutes talking you through a panic attack, so I'm pulling rank. He smiled, and the smile transformed his face from handsome to something that made Clara's chest do a strange, unfamiliar flutter. 2 minutes. Sit. Breathe. Let your body catch up with the fact that you're safe now. Clara wanted to argue. She had meetings, calls, a gala speech to finalize. But her hands were still shaking, and her legs felt like water, and Ryan was looking at her with such patient kindness that she found herself nodding. 2 minutes, she agreed. Ryan stood, giving her space but not leaving. He turned to the red-haired maintenance worker. Jake, call up to Ms. Hale's office, let them know she's safe, and we'll be up shortly. Then get with Tom and start the full safety check on this elevator. I want to know exactly what failed and why. On it, Jake said, already moving toward the stairwell door. Ryan turned back to Clara. You mentioned a gala tonight. The Children's Medical Foundation benefit. I'm giving the keynote speech. That's a good cause. It's good publicity, Clara said automatically, then winced at how cold she sounded. I mean, yes, it's a good cause. The foundation does important work with pediatric cancer research. Ryan's expression didn't change, but Clara got the sense he'd heard what she hadn't said as much as what she had. Will you be all right? To speak tonight, I mean. After this? Of course. It was just an elevator malfunction. These things happen. They do, Ryan agreed. But that doesn't mean they're not scary. It's okay to admit that, you know. Clara looked up at him, this maintenance man who'd just given her permission to be human, and felt something crack in the ice she'd built around herself. Just a hairline fracture, barely noticeable, but there nonetheless. It was scary, she admitted quietly. I don't like enclosed spaces. I never have. I usually... She stopped, unsure why she was telling him this. I usually take the stairs when no one's watching. Ryan's expression softened. Then you were incredibly brave, taking the elevator this morning, and incredibly brave for staying calm in there. I wasn't calm. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. My daughter taught me that. You have a daughter? The words were out before Clara could stop them, and she immediately wanted to take them back. Too personal, too interested. She was his boss's boss's boss, and he was maintenance staff, and there were lines that shouldn't be crossed. But Ryan's face lit up in a way that made Clara's heart do that strange flutter again. Emma. She's 6. Going on 16 according to her teacher. She decided she wanted to go as a dinosaur for Halloween last year, even though all her friends were princesses. Terrified of what the other kids would say, but she did it anyway. That's brave. Clara found herself smiling, really smiling, not the practiced corporate smile she showed cameras and investors. A dinosaur? What kind? Velociraptor. We made the costume together. It was more enthusiasm than accuracy, but she loved it. There was something in the way he said, we. A shadow that passed across his face so quickly, Clara almost missed it. Loss, she thought. Old pain, worn smooth by time, but never quite healed. Your wife? Clara asked gently. Ryan's smile faltered. I'm a widower. Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but Clara meant them. She knew loss, even if hers had been different. That must be incredibly difficult. Some days more than others. But Emma... His expression softened again. Emma makes it worth getting up every morning. Kids have a way of demanding you stay present, you know? Can't dwell too much on the past when you've got a 6-year-old asking why the sky is blue and whether unicorns are real, and can we please get a puppy? Can you get a puppy? Ryan laughed. We're working up to it. Right now we're at the goldfish stage. His name is Flash, and he's apparently the fastest goldfish in the world, according to Emma. Clara felt something twist in her chest. Envy, maybe, for this life she'd never had. This warm, messy, beautiful life, full of goldfish and dinosaur costumes, and someone who needed you not for what you could do, but simply for who you were. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Reality reasserted itself. I should go, Clara said, standing. Her legs felt steadier now. Thank you for... She gestured vaguely at the elevator, at the space he'd occupied, at the conversation that had somehow mattered more than any meeting on her calendar. For everything. Just doing my job, Ms. Hale. But they both knew it had been more than that. Clara straightened her blazer, tucked her phone into her bag, and prepared to step back into the role she wore like armor. But before she could walk away, she turned back. Ryan? Yes, Ms. Hale? The breathing technique, the counting to 4. Thank you for that. He nodded, understanding what she was really thanking him for. Any time. Clara walked toward the stairwell. She'd take the stairs the rest of the way up, she decided. But she could feel Ryan's eyes on her back. She told herself it didn't matter. He was maintenance. She was the CEO. Their worlds had intersected for 22 minutes, and now they would drift back to their separate orbits. She told herself this very firmly all the way up to the 48th floor. She almost believed it. The rest of Tuesday passed in Clara's usual blur of efficiency. Tokyo call, investor lunch, board review. She moved through it all with her customary precision, but something felt different. Off, like a song playing in a key that was almost but not quite right. She kept thinking about Ryan's voice through the intercom, the way his hands had looked, scarred and capable, the warmth in his eyes when he talked about his daughter. At 6:47 p.m., Clara's assistant knocked on her office door. Miss Hale, your car is here. You need to leave for the gala. Clara looked up from her laptop where she'd been reviewing her keynote speech for the 3rd time. Already? You wanted to arrive by 8 for pre-event mingling. Right, mingling. Clara's least favorite part of these events. Forced small talk with donors who wanted to feel philanthropic without actually getting their hands dirty. She'd smile and say all the right things and write a check large enough to get her name on a plaque, and everyone would be happy. Everyone except her. Clara closed her laptop and stood, smoothing down the black evening gown she'd changed into an hour ago. It was designer, perfectly fitted, cost more than Ryan probably made in a month. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror behind her office door and saw exactly what she'd intended: power, wealth, untouchability. The Ice Queen, ready for her throne. Ms. Hale? Her assistant prompted. I'm coming. The Children's Medical Foundation Gala was held at the Drake Hotel in a ballroom that dripped with crystal chandeliers and old money. Clara arrived precisely on time, smiled precisely the right amount, and said precisely the right things to precisely the right people. She was a machine in designer heels, performing her function flawlessly. But in the moments between conversations, she found her mind wandering. She wondered what Ryan was doing right now, probably reading bedtime stories to Emma, probably making her laugh with silly voices and sound effects, probably tucking her in and kissing her forehead and being present in a way Clara had never learned to be. Ms. Hale? The foundation director materialized at her elbow. We're ready for your speech. Clara followed her to the stage, her heels clicking on polished marble. She stood behind the podium and looked out at a sea of faces, wealthy, well-connected, comfortable. These were her people. This was her world. So why did it suddenly feel so hollow? Clara opened her mouth to deliver the speech she'd rehearsed, the carefully crafted words about charitable giving and corporate responsibility and making a difference. But what came out was different. This morning, Clara heard herself say, I got stuck in an elevator. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. This wasn't in the prepared remarks. I was trapped between floors for 22 minutes. It was dark and small, and Clara paused, choosing honesty over polish. I panicked. I was terrified. And I realized something in that elevator, in that dark, small space. I've been living my entire life in a dark, small space. A very expensive, very comfortable, very isolated, dark, small space. She could see the foundation director in the wings, looking alarmed. Clara ignored her. A maintenance man named Ryan talked me through that panic attack. He told me to breathe, to count to 4, to focus on his voice. He stayed with me through the intercom, even though he didn't have to. He could have just sent someone else to fix the elevator while he moved on to his next job. But he didn't. He stayed. And when he finally got those doors open, he looked at me like I was a person, not a CEO, not a title, not a balance sheet, just a person who needed help. Clara gripped the podium, aware that she was probably destroying her reputation with every word but unable to stop. We're here tonight to raise money for sick children. That's important work, critical work. But I wonder, how many of us actually see those children? How many of us know their names, their favorite dinosaurs, whether they're scared of the dark? Or are they just tax write-offs and press releases? The ballroom had gone very quiet. I don't have the answer to that question, Clara continued softly. But I think maybe it starts with learning to breathe, to count to 4, to stay present with someone else's fear instead of just writing a check and walking away. She looked down at her prepared speech, at all the smooth, empty words she'd planned to say. Then she looked back up at the audience. The Children's Medical Foundation does crucial work in pediatric cancer research. They need your support. They need your money. But they also need your presence, your attention, your willingness to see the scared 6-year-old behind the diagnosis, not just the donor opportunity behind the disease. I'm going to write them a check tonight, and I hope you will too. But I'm also going to do something harder. I'm going to show up, volunteer, learn names, be present. Because a very wise maintenance man reminded me today that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply stay when everything in us wants to run away. Clara stepped back from the podium. The silence held for 3 long seconds. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Not the polite, obligatory applause of wealthy donors, but something more genuine. The foundation director rushed over as Clara descended from the stage. Miss Hale, you didn't... The speech we prepared... I know, Clara said. Send me the volunteer schedule. I want to be added to it. She left the gala early, ignoring the people who tried to stop her for conversations and photos. In the back of her town car, Clara pulled out her phone and opened her email. She found the message from her assistant with the full incident report from this morning's elevator malfunction and scrolled down to the maintenance log. Elevator 3, primary floor response. Ryan Cooper, maintenance lead. Clara stared at his name on the screen at the official record of a moment that had been anything but official. 22 minutes that had somehow rewritten her understanding of what mattered. She told herself to let it go, to move on, to go back to her penthouse and her perfect espresso maker and her carefully ordered life. Instead, she opened a new email to her building manager. Subject: maintenance request. I need someone to check the thermostat in my office. It's been running cold lately. Could you send Ryan Cooper from your team tomorrow afternoon? Around 2 p.m. works best. See. Hail, Clara. Hit send before she could overthink it, then leaned back against the leather seat and watched the city lights blur past her window. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably reading about dinosaurs to a 6-year-old named Emma. Somewhere out there was a life that looked nothing like hers, but felt like everything she'd been missing. The elevator doors had opened this morning. Clara was starting to think they'd opened in more ways than one. Ryan Cooper arrived at Clara's office at exactly 2:00 p.m. the next day, carrying a toolbox that had seen better decades and wearing the same gray maintenance shirt that somehow looked different in the filtered light of the executive floor. Clara had spent the morning trying to focus on quarterly projections, but her eyes kept drifting to the clock, watching the minutes crawl toward 2 o'clock like a teenager waiting for prom. This was ridiculous. She was a CEO. He was maintenance staff. She was manufacturing a problem with her thermostat just to see him again, which was possibly the most unprofessional thing she'd done in her entire career, and her career had been built on ruthless professionalism. But when her assistant knocked and announced, "Mr. Cooper is here for your thermostat," his heart did something complicated and entirely unbusinesslike in her chest. "Send him in," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Ryan walked through the door, and Clara was struck again by how present he seemed. Most people who entered her office were already performing, straightening ties, plastering on smiles, preparing their pitches. Ryan just looked at her with those calm blue-gray eyes and said, "Ms. Hale, how's the thermostat?" "Running cold," Clara said, which was technically true if you counted the air conditioning being set exactly where it always was. "Let me take a look." Ryan crossed to the thermostat mounted on her wall and opened the panel. He pulled out a small device from his toolbox and started testing connections, and Clara pretended to return to her laptop while actually watching him work. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking wires and sensors with the kind of focus she usually only saw in surgeons or concert pianists. There was something almost meditative about the way he worked. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourish, just quiet competence. "How's Emma?" Clara asked, then immediately wanted to kick herself. Too personal, too interested, but Ryan smiled without looking away from the thermostat. "She's good. Had a minor crisis this morning when she couldn't find her lucky socks. They're purple with yellow stars. but we located them in the laundry basket just in time for school. Lucky socks? For her spelling test. She's convinced they're magic. He glanced over his shoulder at Clara. I don't have the heart to tell her the magic is actually just her studying every night for a week. Clara found herself smiling. That's sweet. That's Emma. She believes in magic but does the work anyway. Best of both worlds. Ryan returned his attention to the thermostat, making some adjustment Clara couldn't see. Your thermostat's working fine, by the way, running exactly at the temperature it's set for. Clara felt heat creep up her neck. Oh, maybe I'm just... Feels cold in here sometimes. Ryan closed the panel and turned to face her fully. His expression was neutral, professional, but something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly why he was really here. Could be the airflow. I could check your vents, make sure they're balanced properly. That would be great, Clara said, grateful for the excuse to keep him here a little longer. Ryan moved to the vent near her window, the one that overlooked the city skyline. As he worked, Clara found herself asking, did you always want to be in maintenance, or did you have other plans? The question was too personal again, crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed, but Ryan didn't seem to mind. He sat back on his heels, looking out the window at the city below. I was an engineer, he said. Mechanical. Worked for a firm that designed HVAC systems for commercial buildings. Good job, good pay, good benefits. What happened? Sarah got sick. Stage 4 breast cancer. The treatment was... He paused, and Clara saw his jaw tighten. Aggressive, expensive. Even with insurance, the bills piled up. I needed something with flexible hours so I could take her to appointments, something that let me be home with Emma when Sarah couldn't be. Maintenance work gave me that. And after Sarah... Clara couldn't quite finish the sentence. After Sarah died, I thought about going back to engineering, but Emma needed stability, needed routine, and honestly, Ryan looked at Clara, his expression open and honest in a way that made her chest ache. I'd forgotten what it felt like to fix something with my own hands, to see a problem and solve it directly, right there, no bureaucracy or committees or endless meetings. There's something satisfying about that. Simple. Clara thought about her own days, the endless parade of decisions that never quite felt finished, problems that spawned 3 more problems, solutions that required compromise and negotiation and always left someone disappointed. That sounds nice, she said quietly. It is. Most days. Ryan stood, brushing dust off his pants. Your vents are balanced fine too, Ms. Hale. Honestly, your whole office is running perfectly. If you're feeling cold, might just need a sweater. Their eyes met, and Clara saw the gentle humor there, the unspoken acknowledgement that they both knew this wasn't about thermostats or airflow. She should let him leave. Should thank him for his time and return to her spreadsheets and let this strange, unexpected connection fade back into the appropriate distance between CEO and maintenance worker. Instead, she heard herself say, I watched you yesterday. After I left. I pulled up the security footage. Ryan's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't look uncomfortable, just curious. Why? I wanted to see... Clara struggled for words. I wanted to see if you looked different when you thought no one important was watching. And did I? No. You looked exactly the same. You treated Jake the same way you treated me, with respect, with patience, like everyone deserved your full attention, whether they were stuck in an elevator or just asking where you kept the spare light bulbs. Ryan set his toolbox down slowly. Ms. Hale, can I ask you something? Clara, please. When it's just us, call me Clara. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or recognition. Clara, why am I really here? Your thermostat's fine. Your vents are fine. Your whole office is running like a Swiss watch. Clara stood, moving around her desk, eliminating the barrier between them. She was still in her heels, which made her nearly as tall as he was. I wanted to see you again, she admitted. I wanted to hear your voice when it wasn't filtered through an intercom. I wanted... She stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. Wanted what? Ryan's voice was gentle, encouraging. I don't know, Clara said honestly. I've spent my entire adult life knowing exactly what I wanted. Market share, profit margins, competitive advantage. But yesterday, for 22 minutes, I wanted something completely different. I wanted someone to stay with me, to talk to me like I was human. And you did that. And now I can't stop thinking about... She broke off as her office door opened without warning. Her assistant, looking apologetic, stuck her head in. Ms. Hale, I'm so sorry, but the board meeting was moved up. They're waiting for you in conference room A. Clara closed her eyes briefly. Of course reality would intrude right now. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. They said it's urgent. 5 minutes, Clara repeated, her CEO voice sliding back into place like armor. Her assistant disappeared, and Clara turned back to Ryan, trying to find the words that had been right there a moment ago. But the spell was broken, the moment shattered. You should go, Ryan said, saving her from having to say it. He picked up his toolbox. Board meetings wait for no one. Ryan, it's okay, Clara. He smiled, and it was kind and understanding, and somehow that made it worse. You've got your world, I've got mine. Yesterday was what it was, an intersection. But we both need to get back to our normal lives. He was right. Clara knew he was right. But watching him walk toward the door felt like losing something she'd only just discovered existed. Ryan, she called out just as his hand reached the doorknob. He turned back. What time do you pick up Emma from school? The question surprised them both. Ryan tilted his head slightly, studying her. 3:30. Why? I just wondered, if she ever needed those lucky socks again, and you couldn't find them, if you'd... Clara faltered, realizing how insane she sounded. Never mind. I should go to my meeting. But Ryan was smiling now, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his face. If we ever have a lucky sock emergency again, I'll let you know. Then he was gone, and Clara was left standing in her perfectly temperature-controlled office, wondering what the hell she was doing. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Clara moved through it mechanically, approving budgets and rejecting proposals, and saying all the right things while her mind replayed that conversation in her office on an endless loop. When it finally ended, she returned to her desk to find a sticky note attached to her computer monitor. In neat handwriting, it read, Your office temp, 7-2 de Giev. Perfect for humans and CEOs. Clara pressed her fingers to her lips, trying to suppress a smile that had no place on the Ice Queen's face. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara found increasingly creative reasons to request maintenance. A flickering light in her private bathroom, a strange noise coming from her ceiling vent, a door hinge that squeaked. Each time her building manager sent Ryan, and each time Ryan would show up with his toolbox and his calm presence and fix problems that barely existed while they talked about everything and nothing. Clara learned that Emma was obsessed with space and wanted to be an astronaut, that Ryan's favorite meal to cook was spaghetti carbonara because Emma thought it was fancy, that he'd taught himself guitar during Sarah's cancer treatment, playing softly in hospital rooms to help her sleep, that his favorite time of day was the 15 minutes before Emma's bedtime when they'd sit on her bedroom floor and she'd tell him elaborate stories about her stuffed animals' adventures. Ryan learned that Clara had built Hale Industries back from near bankruptcy after her mother had run it into the ground following her father's death, that she spoke 4 languages but couldn't carry a tune, that she'd never had a pet, never learned to ride a bike, never been to a movie theater, that the loneliest she'd ever felt was standing in a room full of people at a networking event, listening to them compete with their accomplishments like gladiators in designer suits. They were careful. They never touched beyond the professional handshake. They never met outside of these manufactured maintenance calls. But Clara felt the pull growing stronger every time she saw him, felt the walls she'd built around herself developing more and more cracks. On a Thursday afternoon in early April, Clara was leaving the building at 6 p.m., earlier than usual because her evening meeting had canceled, when she saw something that made her stop dead in the lobby. Ryan was crouched down next to the building's revolving door, talking to a little girl with dark curls and serious gray eyes. She was wearing a purple backpack decorated with stars and planets, and she was gesturing emphatically while Ryan listened with complete focus. Emma. It had to be Emma. Clara should have kept walking, should have slipped past them unnoticed. Instead, she found herself moving closer, drawn by curiosity and something deeper she didn't want to examine too closely. And Mrs. Patterson said my project was the best in the class, Emma was saying. She said I explained the water cycle better than anyone. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? We can get ice cream, Ryan agreed, smiling. But we need to get home first so you can start your homework before... He looked up and saw Clara standing there. His expression shifted, surprise, then something more complicated. Pleasure and concern mixing together. Ms. Hale, he said, standing. I didn't see you there. I didn't mean to interrupt. Clara looked at Emma, who was studying her with intense curiosity. You must be Emma. Emma nodded solemnly. I am. How did you know my name? Your dad mentioned you. He said you want to be an astronaut. Emma's face lit up. I do. I'm going to be the first person to walk on Mars, and I'm going to bring back rock samples for scientists to study. Do you like space? Clara found herself crouching down to Emma's level, her designer skirt be damned. I don't know much about it, she admitted, but I'd like to learn. What's your favorite planet? Saturn, Emma said immediately, because of the rings. They're made of ice and rock, and they're so beautiful. Did you know Saturn has 62 moons? Some of them have names, and some of them are just numbers. I think that's sad. Everything should have a name. That is sad, Clara agreed, completely charmed by this small person with Ryan's eyes and her own fierce intelligence. If you were in charge, what would you name them? Well, I'd start with names of other astronauts, because the first people who got to space should get to have moons named after them. That's only fair. Clara looked up at Ryan, who was watching their interaction with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride in his daughter, certainly, but something else too. Something warmer and more dangerous. That's very logical thinking, Clara said to Emma. You're going to make an excellent scientist. I know, Emma said with the complete confidence of a 6-year-old. Are you the boss of this building? I am, sort of. Do you boss my dad around? Ryan made a small noise of alarm. Emma, it's okay, Clara said, fighting back a smile. It's a fair question. I don't boss your dad around. He's too good at his job for that. He fixes things before I even know they're broken. Emma nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. She looked at her father. Can we go get ice cream now? I did a really good job on my project. You did, Ryan agreed. He looked at Clara, and she saw him hesitate, saw him weigh something in his mind before saying, Would you like to join us? There's a good place just around the corner. Every professional instinct Clara possessed screamed at her to say no, to maintain boundaries, to remember who she was and who he was, and all the reasons this was inappropriate. I'd love to, she heard herself say. The ice cream shop was called Sweet Dreams, and it was the kind of place Clara would never have entered on her own, cramped and cheerful, with sticky tables and a teenage employee who looked monumentally bored behind the counter. Emma ordered chocolate chip with gummy bears on top. Ryan ordered vanilla with caramel sauce. Clara, who couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten ice cream, ordered the same as Ryan because she had no frame of reference for what was good. They sat at a small table by the window, Emma between them, and Clara watched as the little girl attacked her ice cream with single-minded determination. Tell me about your project, Clara said. The one about the water cycle. Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation involving construction paper and cotton balls and a lot of blue marker. Clara listened, asking questions that made Emma's eyes light up, and felt something unfamiliar unfurl in her chest. This was what normal people did, she realized. Normal people sat in ice cream shops with their children and celebrated small victories and didn't think about market share or quarterly returns. Normal people had this, and she'd been so busy building an empire that she'd never noticed what she was missing. Itas. And that's why rain is important, Emma concluded. Because without the water cycle, everything would die. Plants and animals and people. Even astronauts need water in space. That's a very important lesson, Clara said seriously. I'm glad you're teaching people about it. Emma beamed, then turned to Ryan. Can I go look at the toy machine? Ryan pulled a quarter from his pocket. One turn. Emma grabbed the quarter and darted off to the gumball machine in the corner, leaving Clara and Ryan alone. She's wonderful, Clara said softly. You must be so proud. Every single day, Ryan said. He was watching Emma, his expression soft with love so pure it made Clara's throat tight. Some days I can't believe I get to be her dad. That I get to be the one who sees her grow up, who gets to answer her questions and watch her figure out the world. She has your eyes, and your way of looking at things, like everything deserves your full attention. Ryan turned to her, and the look in those eyes made Clara's heart stutter. Clara, I know, she said quickly. I know we shouldn't. I wasn't going to say that. Ryan's voice was quiet, but firm. I was going to say that these last 2 weeks, having an excuse to see you, to talk to you, it's been the best part of my days. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear, and I know we're from completely different worlds, but I can't keep pretending that you calling in fake maintenance requests is actually about thermostats. Clara stared at him, her ice cream melting forgotten in front of her. What are you saying? I'm saying I see you, Clara, not the CEO, not the ice queen from the magazines. I see the woman who admitted she was terrified in that elevator, the woman who gave a speech about showing up and being present, the woman who just spent 15 minutes listening to my 6-year-old explain the water cycle like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. He paused. I see you, and I like what I see. Clara's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the sticky table. I don't know how to do this, Ryan. I don't know how to be normal, how to sit in ice cream shops and celebrate school projects and feel the things I'm feeling when I look at you. What are you feeling? She looked at him, really looked at him, this kind, patient man who'd stumbled into her carefully controlled life and disrupted everything simply by being genuine. Like I've been living in an elevator for 10 years, she said slowly. A very expensive, very comfortable elevator. And you opened the doors, and now I can see there's a whole world out here I've been missing. Emma came running back, clutching a small plastic toy, a tiny astronaut figure. Look what I got. It's perfect. Ryan smiled at his daughter, then looked back at Clara with a question in his eyes. Clara nodded, a tiny movement that meant everything. Emma, Ryan said, how would you feel if if Clara joined us for dinner sometime, like at our house? Emma looked between them, her 6-year-old brain clearly working through the implications. Would you make dinner with us? Daddy says cooking is more fun with more people. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. When was the last time someone had invited her somewhere, not because of her net worth, but because they wanted her company? I'd love that, she said. But I should tell you, I'm not a very good cook. That's okay, Emma said generously. Daddy will teach you. He's a really good teacher. He taught me how to tie my shoes and how to make pancakes and how to whistle. I can't whistle either, Clara admitted. Emma's eyes went wide. You can't? But everyone can whistle. Not everyone, Ryan said gently. Some people just make different sounds. That's okay. Emma considered this seriously. Then we'll have to teach you, both things, cooking and whistling. Because what if you're on a spaceship and you need to whistle for help? Clara laughed, actually laughed, and it felt strange and wonderful. That's very practical thinking. They finished their ice cream, and Ryan walked Clara back to where her driver was waiting. Emma held Ryan's hand but kept looking up at Clara with curious, assessing eyes. I like her, Emma announced to her father, as if Clara wasn't standing right there. She asks good questions, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. I'm glad you like her, Ryan said. He looked at Clara. Friday night, around 6? I'll text you our address. Friday, Clara agreed. Then, feeling bold, she looked down at Emma. Will those be your lucky socks? The purple ones with yellow stars? Emma giggled. Maybe. Or maybe I'll wear my rocket ship socks. They're lucky, too. Oh, good to have options, Clara said seriously. She climbed into her car and watched through the window as Ryan and Emma walked toward the parking garage, Emma skipping beside her father, the little plastic astronaut clutched in her fist. Clara pressed her hand against the window glass, feeling like she was watching a life she'd always wanted but never knew how to reach for. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ryan, already. Thank you for today. Emma hasn't stopped talking about the moon lady. Apparently that's you. Clara smiled and typed back. The moon lady has homework to do. Need to learn about Saturn's moons before Friday. Ryan's response came quickly. Emma's going to quiz you. Fair warning. I'll be ready, Clara wrote. Then, before she could overthink it, I'm looking forward to it, more than I've looked forward to anything in a long time. She watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times before Ryan's message came through. Me too. Us too. We'll see you Friday, Moon Lady. Clara held her phone against her chest and let herself feel it. The hope, the fear, the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than quarterly earnings and corner offices and perfect temperature control. That night, instead of reviewing reports, Clara stayed up until midnight researching Saturn's moons. She learned their names and their sizes and the stories behind their discoveries. She made notes in the margins of printed articles, feeling like a student preparing for an exam that actually mattered. At 11:47 p.m., her assistant sent an email marked urgent. The Singapore investors wanted to move their meeting to Friday at 6 p.m. Clara stared at the email for a long moment. Singapore was a critical deal. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. Under normal circumstances, she would have rearranged her entire schedule without hesitation. She hit reply. I'm unavailable Friday evening. Please reschedule for Monday. Then she closed her laptop, turned off her phone, and went to sleep thinking about a little girl with Ryan's eyes who wanted to name all of Saturn's moons after astronauts. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Friday arrived wrapped in the kind of spring rain that made Chicago look like a watercolor painting, all soft edges and blurred lights. Clara spent the entire day distracted, catching herself staring out her office window at the clouds instead of focusing on the merger proposal in front of her. Her assistant noticed, casting worried glances in her direction during their morning briefing, but said nothing. The Ice Queen was melting, and everyone was too polite or too terrified to mention it. At 4 p.m., Clara did something she'd never done in 7 years as CEO. She left early. Not just a little early, but 2 full hours before her usual departure time. She told her assistant she had a personal appointment, watched the poor woman's eyebrows climb toward her hairline, then walked out of Hale Industries like she was escaping prison. The drive to Ryan's neighborhood took her from the gleaming glass towers of downtown to a part of the city she'd never visited, tree-lined streets with modest houses, front porches with wind chimes, sidewalks where children's chalk drawings bloomed in pastel colors between the cracks. It was so far from her sterile penthouse that it might as well have been another country. Ryan's house was a small bungalow painted sage green with white trim, a postage-stamp lawn in front, and a maple tree just beginning to leaf out. Clara sat in her car for 3 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel, wondering what the hell she was doing. She'd brought wine, expensive wine, the kind that cost more than Ryan probably spent on groceries in a week, and suddenly it seemed like a terrible choice. Too showy. Too much. Too her. But before she could spiral further into panic, the front door opened and Emma came running out, wearing those purple lucky socks and a t-shirt that said "Future Astronaut" across the chest. She waved frantically at Clara's car, bouncing on her toes with the kind of uncontained excitement that Clara had forgotten existed. Clara grabbed the wine, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the rain. "You came," Emma shouted, as if there had been any doubt. "Daddy said you might have to work late, but I knew you'd come because you promised, and promises are important." "Promises are important," Clara agreed, following Emma up the walkway. "And I always keep mine." Ryan appeared in the doorway, wearing jeans and a navy Henley that made his eyes look impossibly blue. He was holding a dish towel, and there was a smudge of flour on his jaw that made Clara want to reach up and brush it away. He smiled when he saw her, and Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest, like spring arriving after a particularly brutal winter. "Welcome," he said. "Fair warning, the kitchen's a disaster, dinner's running late, and Emma's been practicing her Saturn quiz all afternoon." "I'm ready," Clara said, holding up the wine bottle like a shield. "I brought this, but I just realized it's probably too—" "It's perfect," Ryan said, taking it from her. He glanced at the label and his eyebrows rose slightly. "Really perfect. We're definitely not worthy of this wine, but we'll drink it anyway." Emma grabbed Clara's hand and dragged her inside. The house was small but warm, lived in a way Clara's penthouse had never been. Photographs covered the walls. Emma as a baby, Ryan and a woman who must have been Sarah on their wedding day, family pictures from birthdays and holidays, and ordinary moments that someone had deemed worth remembering. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, and there were books everywhere, stacked on coffee tables, tucked into corners, children's books mixed with cooking magazines and novels with worn spines. It looked like a home, a real home, where real people lived real lives. "This is our living room," Emma announced, giving Clara the full tour. That's Daddy's chair where he reads to me. That's my art table where I do projects. That's Flash. She pointed to a fishbowl on a small table near the window where a goldfish swam lazy circles. He's not actually that fast, but don't tell him. It would hurt his feelings. Clara crouched down to examine Flash. I won't say a word. Your secret's safe with me. Good. Daddy says secrets between friends are okay as long as they're not bad secrets. Emma tugged Clara toward the kitchen. Come on, we're making spaghetti carbonara because I told Daddy you needed fancy food, but he said carbonara is fancy and easy, so it's perfect. The kitchen was indeed a disaster. Bowls and measuring cups everywhere, a pot of water boiling on the stove, bacon sizzling in a pan. Ryan was moving between stations with practiced efficiency, and Clara suddenly felt desperately out of place in her silk blouse and tailored pants. Put me to work, she said, because doing something was better than standing there feeling useless. Ryan looked at her designer clothes and perfect manicure, and she saw him trying to figure out what to assign her. Can you whisk eggs? I can learn. He smiled at that. Fair enough. Come here. Clara moved to stand beside him at the counter. Ryan handed her a bowl and a whisk, then cracked 4 eggs into it with one-handed efficiency that made her feel even more inadequate. Just beat them until they're smooth, he instructed. Not too hard, not too soft. Like this. He put his hand over hers on the whisk and guided her through a few strokes, and Clara was suddenly intensely aware of how close he was standing, the warmth of his body, the way his hand felt wrapped around hers. I think I've got it, she managed to say, though her voice came out shakier than intended. Ryan stepped back, and Clara focused very intently on whisking eggs while Emma chattered about her day at school. The little girl was sitting on a stool at the counter, supposedly doing homework, but mostly providing running commentary on everything happening around her. Mrs. Patterson said I could do my space presentation next week, Emma reported. I'm going to talk about Mars. Did you know Mars used to have water? Like, a long time ago. Scientists think there might have been life there. I did know that, Clara said, grateful for a topic she'd researched. And they're sending more rovers to look for evidence. I want to go there myself someday. Not just send robots. Real me, in a real spaceship. Emma's eyes were bright with dreams that hadn't yet learned to be realistic. Would you come visit me on Mars if I lived there? Clara glanced at Ryan, who was grating cheese and pretending not to listen. That's a very long trip, but yes, I think I would. Someone has to make sure you're eating your vegetables, even on Mars. Daddy already makes me eat vegetables. That's not going to change just because I'm on a different planet. Emma sighed dramatically. Grown-ups are obsessed with vegetables. It's one of our defining characteristics, Ryan said solemnly. They worked together in comfortable chaos, Ryan directing operations like a conductor leading an orchestra. Clara whisked eggs, then learned to drain pasta, then was trusted with the crucial task of combining everything while Ryan added bacon and cheese and pepper. Emma set the table with meticulous care, making sure all the forks lined up perfectly. She gets that from me, Ryan admitted, watching his daughter work. I might have some control issues when it comes to organization. I would never have guessed, Clara said dryly, gesturing at the precisely labeled spice rack on the wall. Ryan laughed. Sarah used to say I treated our kitchen like a military operation, but Emma likes routine, so it works out. It was the first time he'd mentioned Sarah directly, and Clara saw something flicker across his face. Old grief, worn soft but still present. She wanted to say something, but Emma came bouncing back into the kitchen. Done! Can we eat now? I'm starving. My stomach thinks my throat's been cut. Emma! Ryan looked horrified. Where did you hear that phrase? Uncle Mike said it at Thanksgiving. You laughed. Ryan rubbed his face with his flour-dusted hand, making the smudge on his jaw worse. We're having a talk with Uncle Mike. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful, and completely unlike any meal Clara had eaten in years. They didn't talk about business or politics or any of the topics that dominated her usual dinner conversations. Instead, Emma quizzed Clara on Saturn's moons. Ryan told stories about the worst maintenance calls he'd ever received, and Clara found herself laughing, really laughing, until her cheeks hurt. There was this guy on the 23rd floor, Ryan said, pouring the expensive wine Clara had brought into mismatched glasses. Called maintenance because he insisted his office was haunted. Said he kept hearing voices when no one was there. Was it haunted? Emma asked, eyes wide. It was his phone. He'd accidentally turned on some podcast app and it was playing in his desk drawer. Took me 20 minutes to figure that out while he stood there insisting it was ghosts. Clara nearly choked on her wine. You're joking. I wish. The best part? After I showed him the phone, he still seemed disappointed. Like he'd been hoping for ghosts. Maybe ghosts would have been more interesting than his job, Clara suggested. Ryan looked at her thoughtfully. You ever feel like that? Like maybe ghosts would be more interesting? The question hit closer than he probably meant it to. Clara took another sip of wine, considering her answer. Sometimes I sit in board meetings and think about how much more exciting it would be if the walls suddenly started bleeding or something. Clara, Emma gasped. That's scary. You're right. I'm sorry. That would be very scary. Clara caught Ryan's eye across the table and saw understanding there, saw him recognize the darkness she usually kept hidden beneath her polished exterior. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Clara her room. They climbed the narrow stairs to the second floor, Emma's hand warm in Clara's, chattering about every picture and toy and memory attached to the house. Emma's room was exactly what Clara would have expected. Walls painted sky blue, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, shelves overflowing with books about space and science and adventure. But what caught Clara's attention was a photograph on the nightstand. Ryan and Sarah and baby Emma, all three of them laughing at something outside the frame. Sarah was beautiful, dark hair, warm eyes, the kind of woman who looked like she knew how to make a house a home. That's my mommy, Emma said, following Clara's gaze. She died when I was 3, so I don't remember her super well, but Daddy tells me stories about her all the time. Clara felt her heart crack a little. She looks like she was wonderful. Daddy says she was the best person he ever knew. He says I have her smile and her stubbornness. Emma climbed onto her bed, hugging a stuffed astronaut. Do you have a mommy? I do. She's alive, but we're not very close. Clara sat carefully on the edge of Emma's bed. We don't really understand each other. That's sad. Everyone should understand their mommy. Emma tilted her head, studying Clara with those serious gray eyes that looked so much like Ryan's. Daddy said you're lonely sometimes, that you work a lot because you don't have people to go home to. Clara felt exposed, stripped bare by a 6-year-old's casual honesty. He said that? He says it's hard to be a grown-up sometimes, that sometimes grown-ups forget how to have friends because they're too busy being important. Emma scooted closer. Are you too busy being important? I used to be, Clara said slowly. But I'm trying to change that. Good, because Daddy's really nice and he doesn't have enough friends either. He works and takes care of me, and that's all he does. Uncle Mike says he needs to start living again, but Daddy says he is living. He's living for me. Emma's face scrunched up with concentration. I think you both need more friends. Maybe you could be friends with each other. Then you'd both have at least one friend. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. I think you might be right. You're very smart. You know that? I know. Mrs. Patterson says I'm gifted. Emma said it matter-of-factly, without pride or embarrassment. Will you come back after tonight, or is this just a one-time thing because you felt bad for us? The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Clara had to take a moment to compose herself. Emma, I'm here because I like your dad very much, and because I like you very much. Not because I feel bad for anyone. You don't need anyone's pity. You have something most people spend their whole lives searching for. You have love. Real love. The kind that shows up in lucky socks and bedtime stories and spaghetti carbonara on Friday nights. Emma considered this seriously. So you'll come back? If you'll have me, we'll have you. Emma launched herself at Clara, wrapping small arms around her neck in a fierce hug that smelled like strawberry shampoo in childhood. You can teach me about business, and I'll teach you about space, and Daddy will teach both of us about cooking. It'll be perfect. Clara held this small person who'd somehow wormed her way into her heart in less than a week and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was what she'd been missing, this warmth, this connection, This sense of mattering to someone for reasons that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share. When they came back downstairs, Ryan had cleaned the kitchen and was sitting on the couch, looking at his phone with a furrowed brow. He looked up when they entered, and Clara saw worry in his expression. "Everything okay?" she asked. Ryan hesitated, glancing at Emma. "Emma, why don't you go get ready for bed? Brush your teeth, put on pajamas, pick out a book." "But it's only 7:30. "I know, but Clara and I need to talk about grown-up stuff for a minute. Go on, I'll be up to read to you in a bit." Emma grumbled but obeyed, stomping upstairs with the dramatic flair of a child who felt greatly wronged. Once she was gone, Ryan patted the couch beside him. Clara sat, tucking her legs under her. "What's wrong?" Ryan showed her his phone. "My brother sent me this. It's already making the rounds on social media." Clara looked at the screen and felt her blood go cold. It was a photograph, slightly grainy, clearly taken on someone's phone from across the street, of her and Ryan and Emma at Sweet Dreams ice cream shop. The caption read, "Ice Queen Clara Hale, slumming it with maintenance worker and his kid. PR stunt or midlife crisis?" "It gets worse," Ryan said quietly, scrolling. "There are more photos, us walking to the parking garage, me giving you my number. Someone with a lot of time and a telephoto lens has been documenting this." Clara felt sick. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I didn't think. I should have been more careful." "It's not your fault." But his jaw was tight, and she could see him thinking, calculating the implications. Clara grabbed her own phone and opened her social media. The photos were everywhere, reposted and commented on thousands of times. The comments ranged from supportive to vicious, with most falling somewhere in the middle of confusion and speculation. "She's finally acting human for once," one person wrote. "Gold digger spotted," wrote another. "Maintenance man hitting the jackpot." "This is so inappropriate. She's his boss. This is a fireable offense." "Actually really sweet if it's real." "Ice Queen melting for single dad?" "I'm here for it." Poor kid is going to get torn apart when this inevitably crashes and burns. That last comment hit Clara like a physical blow. Emma. She hadn't thought about how this would affect Emma. The little girl who was already growing up without a mother, who just opened her heart to Clara, who believed in lucky socks and magic, and the basic goodness of people. "I'll fix this," Clara said, her mind already racing. "I'll release a statement. Say it was just a friendly dinner, nothing romantic, that we barely know each other. I'll—" "Stop." Ryan's voice was firm. He took her phone gently from her hands. "Clara, look at me." She did, and saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "I don't want you to fix this by lying," Ryan said. "I don't want you to pretend this doesn't mean something, because it does mean something. To me. And I think to you too." "Of course it means something," Clara said, her voice breaking. "But Ryan, look at these comments. Look at what they're saying about you, about Emma. I won't put you through this, either of you." "Shouldn't that be my decision?" Ryan set both phones on the coffee table, then took Clara's hands in his. "I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying I'm thrilled that strangers are posting photos of my daughter online. But I'm saying that I knew this was a possibility when I invited you to dinner, when I gave you my number, when I told you I see you. You can't possibly have known it would be this bad this fast. Maybe not, but I know that hiding, pretending, protecting myself from pain by never risking connection, that's no way to live. Sarah's death taught me that. Life's too short and too precious to waste on fear." His grip on her hands tightened. "I like you, Clara, more than like. I think you're extraordinary. I think Emma thinks you're extraordinary. And I think you've been living in a steel box for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to actually connect with people. So here's my question. Are you going to let some internet trolls and gossip columnists shove you back in that box? Or are you going to be brave enough to see where this goes?" Clara stared at him, at this man who'd rescued her from an elevator and somehow kept rescuing her every time they talked. She thought about her empty penthouse, her perfect espresso maker, her life of carefully controlled isolation. She thought about Emma upstairs, probably listening through the heating vent, waiting to see if the moon lady was going to stick around or disappear like all her mother's friends had after Sarah died. "I'm terrified," Clara admitted. "I don't know how to do this." How to be what you and Emma need. We don't need perfect, Ryan said softly. We need present. We need honest. We need someone who shows up even when it's hard. Can you do that? Could she? Clara thought about the Singapore deal she'd postponed, the meetings she'd rescheduled, the way she'd researched Saturn's moons until midnight because a 6-year-old wanted to quiz her, the way her heart felt lighter when Ryan smiled at her, like something frozen was finally beginning to thaw. I want to try, she said. But Ryan, you need to understand, this is going to get worse before it gets better. The press, the speculation, the scrutiny. People are going to say terrible things about both of us. They're going to question your motives, accuse you of using me. They're going to call me desperate, mock me for dating down. Is that really what you want for Emma? For her to grow up hearing that her father isn't good enough? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Clara could see him wrestling with it, the fear she'd just articulated, clearly one he'd already considered. Finally, he said, My daughter is growing up in a house full of love and respect and possibility. She's growing up believing that people should be judged by their character, not their bank accounts. And yes, she might hear ugly things from ugly people, but she'll also see her father being happy for the first time since her mother died. She'll see him taking a chance on connection instead of hiding behind fear. What lesson do you think is more important for her to learn? Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. You're too good. Both of you. You deserve someone who doesn't come with all this baggage, all this mess. Hey. Ryan reached up and brushed away her tears with his thumb, the gesture so tender it made her chest ache. Everyone comes with baggage. Everyone comes with mess. The question is whether you want to sort through it together or alone. I've done alone. It's safe, but it's also really damn lonely. Upstairs, they heard Emma's door creak open, heard her stage whisper, Are you guys done talking yet? Because I picked out 3 books and I'm not going to bed until someone reads them to me. Ryan and Clara both laughed, the tension breaking. Ryan called up, We're done. Be up in a minute. He turned back to Clara, his expression serious again. Stay. Read books with us. Let Emma fall asleep thinking you're still here. Then we'll figure out the rest. One day at a time, one choice at a time. No pressure, no promises we can't keep. Just stay. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. Ryan stood and pulled her to her feet, then did something that surprised her. He pulled her into a hug. Not a polite, professional hug, but a real embrace, his arms solid around her, his chin resting on top of her head. We've got you, he murmured. You're not in that elevator anymore. You're out here with us. Remember to breathe. Clara breathed, counting to 4 like he'd taught her all those weeks ago in the dark. Held for 4. Exhaled for 4. Felt her racing heart begin to slow. When they pulled apart, Ryan kept hold of her hand. Come on, let's go read about dragons or dinosaurs or whatever Emma's picked out tonight. They climbed the stairs together, and Emma was indeed waiting in her bed, surrounded by 3 books and looking pleased with herself. I picked good ones, she announced. This one's about a girl who wants to be a knight. This one's about space exploration. And this one's about a lonely giant who makes friends with a village. That's quite a selection, Clara said, settling on one side of Emma's bed while Ryan sat on the other. Emma handed Ryan the night book. You read this one, Daddy. Clara should read the space one since that's her area. I'll read the giant one because I'm practicing my reading. They read together, voices overlapping, Emma correcting their pronunciation when they got character names wrong. Clara found herself doing silly voices for the astronauts, making Emma giggle, feeling something warm and bright bloom inside her chest. This was what family felt like, she realized. Not the cold formality of her childhood, not the transactional relationships of her adult life, but this messy, joyful, present connection. When Emma started yawning halfway through the giant book, Ryan took over, his voice dropping to a soft rumble that was clearly part of their bedtime routine. Clara watched as Emma's eyes grew heavy, watched as she fought sleep with the determination of a child who didn't want the day to end. Will you be here when I wake up? Emma mumbled, looking at Clara. Clara glanced at Ryan, who nodded slightly. I'll be here, Clara promised. I'll make you breakfast. Fair warning, though, I don't know how to make pancakes. That's okay. Daddy will teach you. Emma's eyes finally closed. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, little star. Ryan kissed her forehead. Then Emma, already half asleep, mumbled, Love you, Moon Lady. Clara felt her heart stop, restart, then beat in a completely different rhythm. She looked at Ryan, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Carefully, gently, she reached down and brushed Emma's hair back from her forehead. Love you too, she whispered. They crept out of Emma's room like thieves, closing the door quietly behind them. In the hallway, in the soft glow of the nightlight shaped like Saturn, Ryan took Clara's hand again. You okay? He asked quietly. I just told your 6-year-old daughter I love her after knowing her for less than a week. I think I'm having some kind of breakdown. Ryan smiled. Or a breakthrough. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. They went back downstairs and Clara checked her phone. The photos had spread further, the comments multiplying. But there was also a text from her assistant. Just saw the photos. Are you okay? Do you need me to do anything? Clara stared at the message. In 7 years, her assistant had never asked if she was okay. Had never offered help that wasn't strictly professional. Maybe everyone had been waiting for the Ice Queen to melt. She texted back, I'm okay. Better than okay. Take Monday off. You've earned it. The response came immediately. Ms. Hale, did someone steal your phone? Clara laughed and showed Ryan, who grinned. You're causing quite a stir. Just wait until Monday. The board's going to have a field day with this. What will you tell them? Clara thought about it, about all the carefully crafted explanations she could give, all the ways she could spin this into something more acceptable. But Ryan was looking at her with those steady eyes, and Emma was upstairs dreaming about Mars, and Clara was so tired of performing. The truth, she said, that I met someone extraordinary, that I'm choosing to explore something real instead of hiding behind professional distance, that if they have a problem with who I spend my personal time with, they can take it up with HR. Ryan's expression softened. You sure about that? Clara, I don't want to cost you your company. You're not costing me anything. You're giving me something I didn't know I was missing. Clara moved closer to him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his blue eyes, close enough to smell soap and coffee and everything that made him real. Besides, I own 51% of Hale Industries. They can complain all they want, but they can't fire me. That's very practical. I'm a practical person, except when it comes to you, apparently. Then I become someone who researches Saturn's moons and learns to whisk eggs and makes promises to 6-year-olds about breakfast. Ryan reached up and tucked a strand of Clara's hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. For the record, I really like this version of you. The impractical version? The human version. They stood there in his small living room, surrounded by photographs of a life Clara had never thought she wanted, and she realized she was happy. Genuinely, completely happy in a way that had nothing to do with profit margins or market dominance or any of the things she'd spent years chasing. I should probably go soon, Clara said, though she made no move to leave. I'm sure you have things to do tomorrow. I do. Emma has soccer practice at 9, then we're going to the library, then I promised her we'd work on her science fair project. He paused. You could come. If you want. No pressure. You want me to come to soccer practice? I want you to be part of our Saturday. Emma would love it. And honestly, so would I. Clara thought about her usual Saturdays, catching up on work, maybe a charity event, definitely nothing that involved children's sports or public libraries. She thought about how boring and predictable her life had become, how she'd convinced herself that predictable meant safe. I'll be here at 8:30, she said. I'll bring coffee and muffins. Deal. Ryan walked her to the door, and Clara found herself reluctant to leave, wanting to stretch this evening out as long as possible. Clara? She turned back. Thank you for staying, for being brave enough to stay. Clara kissed him. She didn't plan it, didn't overthink it, just rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. It was soft and brief and tasted like hope. When she pulled back, Ryan was smiling. Definitely coming back tomorrow, right? Definitely. Clara drove home through the rain-washed streets, her heart feeling too big for her chest. When she reached her penthouse, it looked exactly as it always had. Pristine, expensive, utterly sterile. She looked at her German coffee maker, her designer furniture, her walls devoid of photographs, and made a decision. She pulled out her phone and started typing, fingers flying over the keyboard. It was time to stop hiding, time to stop performing, time to be human, even if it meant being vulnerable. When she finished, she hit post on all her social media accounts simultaneously. The message was simple. Yes, those photos are real. Yes, I'm dating Ryan Cooper, who works maintenance at Hale Industries. Yes, his daughter Emma is extraordinary. No, I won't be answering questions about my personal life beyond this. What I will say is this: true connection doesn't come with a price tag or a title. It comes from showing up, being present, and having the courage to be seen, really seen, by another person. I spent years building walls. I'm finally learning to build bridges instead. Judge me however you want. I'm too busy learning to be happy to care. She added a single photo, the one she'd taken secretly tonight on her phone of Ryan and Emma reading together, their heads bent close over the book, completely absorbed in their story. Then she put her phone away and went to bed, sleeping better than she had in years. Clara woke at dawn on Saturday to her phone exploding with notifications. Her social media post had gone viral overnight, racked up millions of views, thousands of comments, and been picked up by every major news outlet. She lay in bed scrolling through the responses with her heart in her throat, watching strangers dissect her life, her choices, her right to happiness. Some of the comments were beautiful. This gives me hope that even the most successful people are still searching for real connection. Her honesty is refreshing in a world of corporate PR spin. That picture of them reading together made me cry. This is what love looks like. But others were vicious. Publicity stunt. She'll dump him in 3 months when the novelty wears off. Feel sorry for that kid. She's going to be collateral damage when this implodes. A CEO dating maintenance? This is why companies need fraternization policies. He's obviously using her for money. Wake up, lady. But Clara made herself read them all, the good and the bad, forcing herself to face the reality of what she'd invited into her life, into Ryan and Emma's lives. By 7 a.m., her phone started ringing, her mother, her board members, news outlets requesting interviews, her lawyer concerned about liability issues. Everyone wanted something, an explanation, a retraction, a statement, a story. She ignored them all and got dressed for soccer practice. At 8:15, Clara pulled up to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Ryan's house and ordered 2 large coffees and a box of assorted muffins. The barista did a double take when she recognized her, phone already moving toward her pocket like she might sneak a photo. Clara met her eyes steadily. "Please don't," she said quietly. "I'm just getting coffee for some friends." The barista hesitated, then nodded. "For what it's worth. That picture you posted was really sweet. My mom died when I was little. I would have killed to have someone look at my dad the way you were looking at that guy." Clara felt her throat tighten. "Thank you. That means a lot." She arrived at Ryan's house at 8:30 exactly, balancing coffee and muffins, her stomach a knot of nerves. What if Emma had seen the comments? What if Ryan had changed his mind overnight? What if Clara's post had made everything worse instead of better? But when Ryan opened the door, he was smiling. He took the coffee carrier from her hands and kissed her cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world, like photographers weren't probably lurking somewhere documenting this moment. "You posted," he said simply. "I posted. Was that okay? I should have asked you first. I should have—" "It was perfect. Come in. Emma's been bouncing off the walls since she woke up at 6 and found out you were coming to soccer." Emma came running from the kitchen wearing a bright blue jersey with the number 7 on it, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that was already listing to one side. "Clara, you came. Did you bring muffins? Daddy said you might bring muffins. I love muffins." "I brought muffins," Clara confirmed, following them into the kitchen. Chocolate chip, blueberry, and something the barista called morning glory, which apparently has carrots in it. Emma made a face. "Carrots in a muffin? That's weird, but I'll try it because trying new things is how we learn." Ryan caught Clara's eye over Emma's head and mouthed, "Where did she come from?" Clara grinned. They ate breakfast standing around the kitchen counter, Emma talking a mile a minute about soccer strategy and her friend Olivia, who was the best goalie in their league, and how she hoped Coach Martinez would let her play striker today. Clara learned that Emma was surprisingly competitive for someone so small, and that she took soccer almost as seriously as she took space exploration. "Do you play any sports?" Emma asked Clara through a mouthful of chocolate chip muffin. "I used to play tennis at boarding school." "What's boarding school?" Ryan coughed. "It's a school where you live there instead of at home." Emma's eyes went wide with horror. You didn't live with your mommy and daddy? Why not? Were they mean to you? No, they just... Clara struggled to explain the logic of her childhood to a 6-year-old who'd clearly been raised in a house where love was the priority. They thought it would give me a better education, more opportunities. That's sad, Emma declared. I would never want to live away from Daddy, even if the school had rocket ships. Clara felt something twist in her chest. She'd spent years convincing herself that her isolated childhood had made her stronger, more independent, better prepared for the ruthless business world. But looking at Emma's open, affectionate relationship with Ryan, Clara realized what she'd actually missed: connection, security. The knowledge that someone would always choose her, always want her close, always see her as more important than any opportunity. It was sad, Clara admitted, but it taught me a lot about being independent. Ryan's hand found hers under the counter and squeezed gently. He understood what she wasn't saying, understood the cost of all that independence. They loaded into Ryan's car, a 7-year-old Honda that was clean but worn, with Emma's booster seat in the back and a collection of soccer balls in the trunk. Clara folded herself into the passenger seat and felt the strangeness of it, the ordinariness. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been in a car that didn't have a driver, that smelled like French fries and kid shampoo instead of leather and air freshener. The soccer field was in a public park, surrounded by other fields where other children's teams were warming up. Parents clustered on the sidelines with camping chairs and travel mugs, looking tired but present. Clara felt desperately out of place in her designer jeans and cashmere sweater, but Ryan grabbed her hand as they walked toward the field like it was the most natural thing in the world. Fair warning, he said. Soccer parents are intense, and they're definitely going to recognize you. I can handle intense, Clara said, with more confidence than she felt. She couldn't handle it. The whispers started immediately, parents nudging each other, pulling out phones, not even bothering to be subtle about their staring. Clara felt Ryan tense beside her, felt him preparing to defend her, but before he could say anything, Emma came running over. Clara, come sit with me and Daddy. I saved you a spot on our blanket. Emma grabbed Clara's hand and dragged her to a spot on the grass where Ryan had spread out an old quilt. Clara sat carefully, intensely aware of the eyes on her, the cameras pointing in her direction. This was what she'd signed up for with that post. This was the price of honesty. The game started, and Clara tried to focus on Emma sprinting up and down the field with fierce determination. The kid was actually good, fast and fearless, not afraid to go after the ball even when kids twice her size were guarding it. Ryan shouted encouragement from the sidelines, completely unselfconscious, clearly one of those parents who was fully invested in every moment of his child's activities. At halftime, when Emma came jogging over for water and orange slices, a woman approached their blanket. She was maybe 40, wearing yoga pants and an expression Clara recognized from 1,000 boardrooms. Calculated friendliness masking judgment. Ryan, the woman said, I don't think we've been introduced to your friend. Ryan's jaw tightened. This is Clara. Clara, this is Michelle. Her daughter Sophia is on Emma's team. Oh, I know who she is, Michelle said, her smile sharp. I think everyone knows who she is after last night's post. Very brave of you, Clara. Very modern. Clara had spent 15 years navigating corporate politics. She knew a veiled insult when she heard one. Thank you. I'm learning that authenticity requires courage. Emma's wonderful, by the way. Ryan's done an incredible job raising her. Well, he's had to, hasn't he? Since Sarah... Michelle trailed off meaningfully. It's just nice to see him getting out there again. Though I have to say, we were all a bit surprised by the speed of things. And the circumstances. What circumstances? Emma piped up, looking between the adults with confusion. Ryan put a hand on Emma's shoulder. Nothing, sweetheart. Michelle was just saying hi. You ready to get back out there? Hang on. Clara stood, bringing herself to her full height. She was taller than Michelle, and right now she was channeling every ounce of CEO authority she possessed. I'm sorry, what circumstances are you referring to? Because if you're implying that my relationship with Ryan is inappropriate because of where we work, I'd like to remind you that I'm not actually his supervisor. We work in the same building but different departments entirely, and my personal life is not up for public commentary, especially not in front of his daughter. Michelle's eyes widened. I didn't mean... I was just... What you meant, Clara continued coldly, is that you don't think Ryan is good enough for me. That somehow a maintenance worker dating a CEO is scandalous or wrong. But here's what I think is wrong: judging people based on their job titles instead of their character. Ryan is one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever met. Emma is brilliant and compassionate and everything I hope my own children might be someday. So if you have something to say about my relationship, say it to me directly. Don't hide behind passive-aggressive concern. The entire sideline had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Clara felt Ryan's hand on her back, steady and warm. Michelle's face had gone red. I apologize. I was out of line. I'll just... She retreated quickly, rejoining a cluster of other parents who were whispering furiously. Emma was looking up at Clara with something like awe. That was so cool. You were like a superhero protecting us. Clara's anger deflated instantly. She crouched down to Emma's level. I'm sorry, sweetie. I shouldn't have made a scene at your soccer game. Are you kidding? That was awesome. Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck. Sophia's mom is always saying mean stuff to people. Someone needed to tell her to stop. The referee's whistle blew, calling the kids back onto the field. Emma ran off, ponytail bouncing, and Clara sank back onto the blanket feeling shaky. You didn't have to do that, Ryan said quietly. Yes, I did. I'm not going to let people treat you like you're less than because you fix things with your hands instead of pushing paper around a desk. Clara watched Emma position herself for the kickoff. That woman, she looked at you like you were a charity case, like I was slumming it. It made me furious. Welcome to my world. Ryan's voice was tight. That's what Emma and I have been dealing with since Sarah died. Other parents treating us like we're damaged goods. Like Emma needs extra supervision because she doesn't have a mother. Like I can't possibly be a good parent because I'm just a dad, not a mom. Clara looked at him and saw the old hurt there, the accumulated weight of 1,000 small dismissals and condescensions. How do you stand it? You focus on what matters. Emma knows she's loved. That's what counts. Ryan glanced around at the other parents, most of whom were still stealing glances at them. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't get exhausting. The constant judgment, the assumptions. And now with you... He stopped. Now it's going to be worse, Clara finished, because I'm making you a target. I'm making Emma a target. That's not what I was going to say. Ryan turned to face her fully. I was going to say that now I don't have to face it alone. You just went full mama bear on Michelle, and honestly, it was kind of hot. Clara felt herself smile despite everything. Hot? Incredibly hot. Watching you defend my honor in your designer jeans and cashmere sweater, yeah, I'm into it. They watched the rest of the game in relative peace, though Clara could feel the weight of attention on them like a physical thing. Emma scored a goal in the final minutes, and Clara found herself on her feet shouting along with Ryan, not caring how she looked or what people thought. This was her life now, messy and public and completely worth it. After the game, Emma was riding high on victory, chattering non-stop about her goal and how Olivia had blocked 3 shots, and how next week they were playing the Wildcats who were undefeated, but Emma thought their team could take them. They stopped for celebratory ice cream, a different shop this time, one where the teenager behind the counter had no idea who Clara was and didn't care. Can we go to the library now? Emma asked around a mouthful of mint chocolate chip. I want to get more books about Mars, and maybe some chapter books. Mrs. Patterson says I'm reading at a 4th grade level. Of course we can, Ryan said. Clara, you still up for this? I know it's probably not how you usually spend your Saturdays. Clara thought about her usual Saturdays, working in her empty penthouse, maybe attending a charity function where she knew no one and cared about nothing. This is exactly how I want to spend my Saturday. The library was a beautiful old Carnegie building with high ceilings and the particular smell of books that made Clara nostalgic for something she'd never quite had. Emma led them straight to the children's section like she owned the place, which, according to Ryan, she basically did. We're here at least once a week, Ryan explained, settling into a chair while Emma disappeared between the stacks. It's free entertainment and educational. Can't beat that combination. Clara wandered through the children's section, pulling books at random, reading back covers. She found herself in the young adult section when her phone buzzed. Her mother. Again. Clara sighed and answered, Mother. Clara, her mother's voice was ice. What on earth were you thinking with that post? The board has been calling me all morning. The investors are concerned. You're making yourself, and by extension, the company, a laughingstock. I'm dating someone. That's not a laughingstock. That's called having a personal life. You're dating maintenance, Clara. Maintenance. Do you understand how that looks? What people are saying? Clara felt her temper spike. What people are saying is that I'm finally acting like a human being instead of a robot. And you know what? They're right. I spent 32 years being exactly what you wanted. Cold, focused, successful by every external measure. And I was miserable. Ryan makes me happy. Emma makes me happy. Sitting in a library on a Saturday makes me happy. I'm sorry if that's embarrassing for you, but I'm not sorry for doing it. Don't be naive. This man, he's using you. Can't you see that? He sees dollar signs, not a person. And when you finally wake up and realize it, the damage to your reputation will be irreversible. Clara looked across the library and saw Ryan helping Emma reach a book on a high shelf, his patience and gentleness so evident in every gesture. You're wrong. You're wrong about him, and you're wrong about what makes life worth living. I have to go. Clara, don't you dare hang up on... Clara ended the call and turned off her phone entirely. When she returned to the children's section, Emma had accumulated a stack of books taller than her head and was trying to narrow it down to the library's limit of 10. This is so hard, Emma moaned. They're all good. How do I choose? What if we check out 10 this week and come back for the others next week? Clara suggested. Emma's face lit up. Really? You'll come back next week too? If you'll have me. Obviously, we'll have you. Right, Daddy? Ryan smiled at Clara over Emma's head, and in that smile, Clara saw her future, not the perfect, controlled future she'd always imagined, but something messier and more beautiful. Library trips and soccer games, and defending the people she loved from small-minded gossip. They checked out Emma's books and walked back to the car, Emma skipping between them, holding both their hands. It felt natural and right, and Clara found herself thinking about the photograph on Emma's nightstand, Ryan and Sarah and baby Emma, a family unit complete and happy before tragedy struck. Can I ask you something? Clara said to Ryan while Emma was buckling herself into her booster seat. Always. Do you think Sarah would approve? Of me, I mean. Of us. Ryan was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. Sarah believed that love was something you chose every day, that you showed up for people even when it was hard, that being present was more important than being perfect. He looked at Clara. She would have liked you a lot, and she would have been happy that Emma has someone else in her life who treats her like she's extraordinary. She is extraordinary. Yeah, she is, just like her mom. Ryan opened the passenger door for Clara. Sarah also believed that life was too short to waste on fear, that we owe it to ourselves and the people we love to be brave. So yeah, I think she'd approve. They drove back to Ryan's house, and Clara found herself volunteering to help with Emma's science fair project, something involving plant growth and different types of soil. They spent the afternoon in Ryan's backyard, Emma carefully measuring soil samples while Clara took notes, and Ryan built a frame to hold the experiment. It was domestic and ordinary, and Clara loved every second of it. Around 5 p.m., Ryan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's my brother. I should take this. He stepped inside while Clara and Emma continued working. Emma was chattering about hypotheses and variables when Clara's own phone, which she'd turned back on, started ringing. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Ms. Hale? An unfamiliar voice. This is David Chen from the Chicago Tribune. I'm working on a story about your relationship with Ryan Cooper, and I was hoping to get a comment from you. Clara's stomach sank. No comment. Please don't call this number again. Just a few questions. How long have you been seeing Mr. Cooper? Is Hale Industries planning to update its fraternization policy? Are there concerns about... Clara hung up. 2 seconds later, her phone rang again. Different number. She didn't answer, but the voicemail notification popped up immediately. Then another call. And another. Ryan came back outside looking grim. That was Mike. Apparently reporters have been calling him, calling my neighbors, even going to Emma's school asking questions about us. Clara felt sick. Ryan, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of. They're invading your privacy, Emma's privacy. Hey, Ryan took her hands. We knew this might happen. We talked about this. Talking about it and living it are different things. Clara looked at Emma, who was still happily measuring soil, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. What if they approach her? What if they scare her? Then we deal with it, together. Ryan's voice was firm. I talked to the school. They're aware of the situation and won't let anyone near Emma who isn't authorized. Mike's screening his calls. We're taking precautions. This is insane. We've been dating for less than 2 weeks and it's already a circus. Welcome to dating someone famous, Ryan said with a wry smile. Though I have to say, this is not how I imagined my love life going in my 30s. How did you imagine it? Honestly, I didn't. After Sarah died, I kind of figured that was it for me. One great love per lifetime, you know? I'd focus on Emma and work and that would be enough. He squeezed her hands. But then this terrifying CEO got stuck in my elevator and turned out to be human underneath all that ice. And suddenly, I could imagine a future that wasn't just survival. An actual future with possibility in it. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. I don't want to ruin that future before it even starts. I don't want Emma to be hurt because of me. Clara. Emma's voice made them both turn. The little girl was standing there, dirt on her hands and concern in her eyes. Are you crying? What's wrong? Clara wiped her eyes quickly. Nothing, sweetheart. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're sad. Emma walked over and put her small, dirty hands on Clara's cheeks. Did someone say mean things to you? Like Sophia's mom? Sort of. Some people don't understand why your dad and I like each other. They're asking a lot of questions and it's making things complicated. Emma frowned, thinking hard. Daddy says complicated is just another word for things that take more effort. And he says anything worth having is worth effort. Are you worth effort, Clara? The question, asked with such innocent directness, made Clara laugh through her tears. I hope so. Are you? Obviously, I'm awesome. Emma said it without a trace of arrogance, just stating a fact. So if we're both worth effort, then the complicated stuff doesn't matter. We just keep trying, right, Daddy? Ryan picked Emma up, dirt and all, and hugged her. Right. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy being a grown-up. That evening, after Emma had been fed and bathed and read to and tucked in, a process that took nearly 2 hours and involved 3 more books, 4 glasses of water, and 6 different reasons why she couldn't possibly go to sleep yet, Clara and Ryan finally collapsed on the couch together. Is bedtime always that complicated? Clara asked. That was actually pretty smooth. Wait until she's overtired. Then it's like negotiating with a tiny terrorist who controls nothing but refuses to surrender. Clara laughed and leaned into Ryan's side, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. On the TV, some mindless sitcom played on mute. Clara's phone sat on the coffee table, face down, still buzzing periodically with calls and texts she was ignoring. I need to deal with the board, Clara said quietly. They're going to call an emergency meeting, demand explanations, possibly try to force me out. Can they do that? Force you out? They can try. I own controlling shares, but there are ways to make my life difficult if they want to. Shareholders' lawsuits, votes of no confidence, pressure from investors. Clara sighed. Corporate politics is its own kind of warfare. What will you tell them? Clara thought about it, about all the ways she could spin this to minimize damage. But Emma's words echoed in her head. Anything worth having is worth effort. The truth, that my personal life is my personal life, that I'm not breaking any laws or policies, that they can accept it or deal with the consequences. That's pretty badass. I learned from watching you stand up to Michelle this morning, Ryan laughed. I didn't do anything. Exactly. You didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't act like you had anything to be ashamed of. You just existed as yourself and let her be uncomfortable with it. That's power. Or stubbornness. My family would say stubbornness. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Clara felt some of the day's tension begin to drain away. This was what she'd been missing in her perfect, controlled life. these quiet moments of simply being with another person. No performance, no agenda, just presence. Clara. Ryan's voice was soft. Are you sure about this? About us? Because once we really commit to this, once you go in front of that board and defend us, there's no going back. You'll have taken a public stand. Your reputation will be tied to mine, and I'm just... He stopped, struggling with words. You're just what? I'm just a guy who fixes elevators and makes spaghetti and reads bedtime stories. I'm not sophisticated or connected or any of the things someone like you usually dates. What if you wake up in 6 months and realize you could do better? Clara shifted to face him fully. Ryan Cooper, let me tell you what you are. You're someone who stayed on an intercom talking to a stranger through a panic attack when you could have just sent someone else. You're someone who raised an extraordinary daughter by yourself while grieving your wife. You're someone who makes every person you interact with feel seen and valued. You're someone who wasn't intimidated by my title or my money or my reputation, who looked past all of that and saw me. She cupped his face in her hands. I spent 32 years chasing things that looked impressive on paper but felt empty in practice. You're the first real thing I've found. So no, I'm not going to wake up and think I can do better. I'm going to wake up grateful that you took a chance on me. Ryan kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, he was smiling. Okay, just checking, because I'm all in if you are. I'm all in, Clara confirmed. They stayed on the couch until nearly midnight, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the coming week, discussing how to handle the media attention. Ryan told her about his engineering background, about projects he'd worked on before Sarah got sick, about dreams he'd set aside when life demanded he choose stability over ambition. What if you went back to it? Clara asked. Clara, to engineering, not now, but eventually, when things settle down. Ryan looked surprised. I'm 40. That's old to be starting over in a field that moves as fast as engineering does. 40 isn't old, and you wouldn't be starting over, you'd be returning with more life experience and perspective. Claire was already thinking strategically, connecting dots. Hale Industries has an engineering division. We're always looking for experienced people who understand both the technical and practical sides of building operations. Claire said, I'm not offering you a job because we're dating. I'm saying that if you're interested in exploring a return to engineering, there are opportunities, that's all. Clara paused. Unless you love maintenance work, in which case, ignore everything I just said. Ryan laughed. I don't love it. It's fine. It pays the bills. It gave me flexibility when I needed it. But designing systems, solving complex problems, actually engineering solutions instead of just fixing what breaks. Yeah, I miss that. I miss using that part of my brain. Then let's figure out how to get you back to it. When you're ready. No pressure. They eventually moved to Ryan's bedroom, though Clara insisted she should probably go home. Ryan countered that it was late, she'd had wine, and besides, Emma would be devastated if Clara wasn't there for breakfast like she'd promised. So Clara borrowed one of Ryan's t-shirts and brushed her teeth with a spare toothbrush and climbed into his bed, which was just a regular queen-size mattress with navy sheets and too many pillows. It was perfect. She fell asleep wrapped in Ryan's arms, listening to the sound of his breathing, feeling safer than she had in her security-monitored penthouse with its bulletproof windows and state-of-the-art alarm system. Safety, she was learning, wasn't about locks and cameras. It was about trust, about knowing someone would stay even when staying was hard. Sunday morning arrived with Emma bursting into the bedroom at 7 a.m., not even remotely apologetic about interrupting. You're still here. I knew you'd still be here. Can we make pancakes? Clara needs to learn how to make pancakes because what if there's a pancake emergency? Clara blinked awake to find Emma bouncing on the bed between her and Ryan. What constitutes a pancake emergency? Any situation where pancakes are needed but unavailable, Emma said seriously. It happens more than you'd think. They made pancakes together in the tiny kitchen, Emma supervising while Ryan taught Clara the proper consistency for batter and the right temperature for the griddle. Clara burned the first two, got the third one edible, and by the fifth had actually created something that resembled the fluffy circles Ryan was producing with effortless skill. You're getting better, Emma encouraged. By next week, you'll be an expert. Next week. The casual assumption that Clara would be here next week, and the week after that. It should have felt suffocating. should have triggered all Clara's flight instincts. Instead, it felt like coming home. After breakfast, Clara finally had to face reality. She had a board meeting scheduled for Monday morning, and she needed to prepare. She needed to go home, review files, build her defense. She kissed Emma goodbye, kissed Ryan goodbye with considerably more intensity, and drove back to her penthouse feeling like she was leaving part of herself behind. Her phone exploded the moment she turned it back on. 73 missed calls, 246 text messages, emails in the hundreds. Clara scrolled through them systematically, categorizing by priority. Board members demanding explanations, investors requesting meetings, her legal team wanting to discuss options, friends she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly concerned about her well-being, and reporters, so many reporters. But there were also messages of support. Her assistant, "Whatever you need, I'm here." A college friend, "About time you did something impulsive. Proud of you." A former colleague, "That man looks at you like you're the only person in the room. Hold on to that." Clara spent Sunday evening preparing for war. She pulled out every regulation, every policy, every precedent that might be relevant. She reviewed her contract, her shareholder agreements, her rights and obligations as CEO. She built her argument like she was preparing for the most important presentation of her life. Because in many ways, she was. She was fighting for the right to be human, the right to love someone without asking permission, the right to choose connection over optics. By the time she went to bed Sunday night, Clara was ready. She'd chosen her armor, a charcoal gray suit that meant business, her highest heels, her coldest Ice Queen expression. She'd fight fire with ice, the way she always had. But this time, she was fighting for something that actually mattered. Monday morning came sharp and cold, the kind of Chicago morning that felt like the city itself was preparing for battle. Clara arrived at Hale Industries at 6:30, 2 hours before the emergency board meeting, and took the stairs to her office. She couldn't bring herself to use the elevator. Not today, not when she needed every ounce of strength and clarity. Besides, the stairwell held no memories of panic attacks or rescue, or the moment her carefully controlled life had started unraveling in the best possible way. Her assistant was already at her desk, looking exhausted but determined. "Miss Hale, I've prepared the files you requested. The board members started arriving 20 minutes ago. They're waiting in conference room A." "Let them wait," Clara said. "I'll be there at 8:30 as scheduled. Has anyone from maintenance tried to contact me?" Her assistant hesitated. "Mr. Cooper called earlier, around 6. He said—" She consulted her notes. "He said to tell you that Emma's wearing her lucky socks and they're thinking of you, and that you should breathe, count to 4. Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest, despite the cold fear. "Thank you. If he calls again, put him through immediately, regardless of what I'm doing." She spent the next 2 hours reviewing her presentation, her arguments, her evidence that she'd violated no policies and committed no ethical breaches. The facts were on her side. But Clara had been in corporate America long enough to know that facts mattered less than optics, and optics mattered less than power. This meeting would be about who controlled the narrative, who could afford to blink first, who had the most to lose. At 8:25, Clara stood, straightened her suit jacket, and walked toward the conference room. Her heels clicked against the marble floors with the precise rhythm of a countdown. She was the Ice Queen again, armored and untouchable, but this time she was fighting for something that made the armor feel less like protection and more like costume. The board was assembled when she entered, 12 people who'd helped build Hale Industries into what it was, who'd trusted her vision and benefited from her ruthless efficiency. Her mother sat at the far end of the table, her expression carved from stone. The lead investor, Marcus Webb, sat at the opposite end, his fingers steepled in front of him like a judge preparing to deliver a sentence. Clara took her seat at the head of the table and met each person's eyes in turn. "Good morning. I appreciate you all coming on such short notice. I understand you have concerns about my recent social media post and the publicity surrounding my personal life. I'm here to address those concerns directly." Marcus cleared his throat. "Clara, I think we can dispense with the formalities. We've all seen the photos, read the articles, watched your relationship become tabloid fodder. The question is simple. What were you thinking?" "I was thinking," Clara said calmly, "that I'm entitled to a personal life. That dating someone who works in the same building as me, but not in my chain of command, not in any capacity that creates conflict of interest, is not a violation of company policy or ethical standards. It's a violation of common sense, her mother said sharply. You're dating maintenance, Clara. Maintenance. Do you understand how that makes this company look? How it makes you look? It makes me look human, like someone who values character over credentials, like someone who understands that a person's worth isn't determined by their job title. Clara kept her voice level, professional. I've reviewed every relevant policy. I've consulted with our legal team. There are no grounds for disciplinary action here. Legal grounds aren't the issue, Marcus interjected. The issue is perception, investor confidence, brand integrity. You're the face of this company, Clara. Your reputation is inextricably linked to Hale Industries' reputation. And right now you're being portrayed as a CEO who's lost her objectivity, who's prioritizing a personal relationship over professional judgment. Based on what evidence? Clara pulled out a folder. Let me share some data with you. Since my social media post Friday night, Hale Industries stock has actually risen 3%. Our website traffic is up 47%. We've received inquiries from 12 potential corporate clients who specifically mentioned being impressed by a CEO who values work-life balance and authentic leadership. The press has been mixed, yes, but the actual business metrics suggest this is helping rather than hurting us. She passed around copies of the data she'd compiled. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that in the 7 years I've been CEO, I've increased company valuation by 312%. I've expanded into 4 new markets. I've improved employee retention by 60% and customer satisfaction by 42%. My personal life has never interfered with my professional performance, and it won't start now. One of the board members, Patricia Chen, spoke up. No one's questioning your track record, Clara, but you have to admit the optics are problematic. Dating someone from such a different socioeconomic background, someone with a child, it raises questions about your judgment, your priorities. What it raises, Clara said, her voice hardening, are questions about our collective biases. Tell me, Patricia, if I were dating a male CEO, would we be having this conversation? If I were a male CEO dating my assistant, would anyone care? We both know the answer. This is about class prejudice and sexist double standards, not about my judgment or priorities. That's not fair, Marcus protested. Isn't it? Let me ask you all something. Clara stood, commanding the room. How many of you know the names of the people who clean your offices, who maintain the buildings where you work, who fix the systems that keep your comfortable lives running? How many of you have ever looked at those people and seen them as fully human, as worthy of respect and consideration? The silence was deafening. Ryan Cooper is a former mechanical engineer who left his career to care for his dying wife and raise his daughter. He's brilliant, capable, and has more integrity in his smallest finger than most people in this room have in their entire bodies. The fact that he currently works in maintenance doesn't diminish his value as a person, and the fact that you all think it does says far more about you than it does about me. Her mother stood abruptly. How dare you lecture us about values? I raised you better than this, Clara. I taught you that success requires sacrifice, that emotional entanglement is a liability, that being alone and miserable is somehow noble, Clara interrupted. You taught me to be afraid, Mother, to protect myself by never letting anyone close. You taught me that love was weakness and vulnerability was failure. And you know what? I'm done learning those lessons. They didn't make me strong, they made me empty. Her mother's face went pale, then red. You ungrateful. After everything I sacrificed, everything I did to prepare you for this role. You didn't prepare me for this role. Dad did. Before he died, before you took over and ran this company into the ground, because you were too proud to ask for help, too stubborn to admit you were in over your head. I spent 15 years cleaning up your mistakes, rebuilding what you destroyed. So don't talk to me about sacrifice. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Clara had never spoken to her mother this way, had never publicly acknowledged the truth they both knew but never discussed. Her mother sat back down slowly, her hands trembling. Marcus attempted to regain control of the meeting. Clara, I think we're getting off track. The issue at hand, Clara cut him off, is whether this board trusts me to lead this company while also having a personal life. So let me make this simple. I'm dating Ryan Cooper. I care about him and his daughter. I'm not hiding it, I'm not apologizing for it, and I'm not ending it to make any of you more comfortable. If that's a problem, you have two options. You can accept it and move forward, or you can attempt to force me out and deal with the consequences." "What consequences?" one of the other board members asked nervously. Clara smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I own 51% of this company. You can make noise. You can vote no confidence. You can try to create problems for me. But you can't actually remove me without cause, and nothing I've done constitutes cause. What you can do is make me angry enough that I stop being collaborative, that I stop consulting you on major decisions, that I remember I have controlling interest and start acting like it. Is that really how you want this relationship to go?" She let that sink in, watched them process the reality that they needed her more than she needed them. Then she softened slightly, because ruling by fear alone was her mother's strategy, and Clara was trying to be better. "Or," she continued, "you can trust that I know what I'm doing, that I've thought this through, that I'm capable of maintaining professional standards while also being in a relationship. I'm not asking permission to date Ryan. I'm informing you that I am dating him, and that it will not impact my ability to lead this company. The choice is yours, acceptance or unnecessary conflict." Patricia spoke first. "I move that we table this discussion and reconvene when emotions aren't so high. We're not going to make good decisions in this state." Several other board members nodded agreement. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he was outnumbered. "Fine. Motion to table until our next scheduled meeting in 3 weeks. All in favor?" Most hands went up. Clara's mother stayed down, her expression bitter. "Motion carries," Marcus said stiffly. "Clara, I hope you understand that this isn't over. We'll be watching closely to ensure your personal life doesn't interfere with company business." "Watch as closely as you like," Clara said. "You'll find I'm still the same CEO who's made all of you considerably wealthier over the past 7 years." The meeting dispersed, board members filing out with various expressions of concern, confusion, or barely concealed hostility. Clara's mother was the last to leave. She paused at the door, looking back at her daughter with something that might have been pain or might have been rage. With her mother, it was always hard to tell the difference. "You think you're happy now," her mother said quietly. "You think this man and his child are going to fulfill you in ways that success never could. But love doesn't last, Clara. It fails you when you need it most. And when it does, you'll realize that everything I taught you was designed to protect you from exactly this kind of pain." "Maybe," Clara said, "or maybe you're wrong. Maybe the reason love failed you was because you never let it be real. You never let Dad all the way in, never let yourself be vulnerable enough to actually connect. And when he died, instead of grieving, you armored up and called it strength. That's not protection, Mother. That's prison." Her mother left without another word, and Clara was finally alone in the conference room. She sat back down heavily, feeling the adrenaline drain away, leaving her shaky and exhausted. She'd won, sort of. She'd bought herself time, asserted her authority, made it clear she wouldn't be intimidated. But the war wasn't over. It had just entered a new phase. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "How'd it go?" Clara typed back. "Survived, barely. They tabled it for 3 weeks." "That's good, right?" "It's not bad. It means they're not confident they can force the issue, but it also means 3 weeks of scrutiny and pressure. We can handle 3 weeks. We've handled 3 days of paparazzi and soccer mom judgment. We're practically veterans." Clara smiled despite her exhaustion. "How's Emma?" "Worried about you. Asked if you're in trouble because of us. I told her you're fine, but she wants to hear it from you. Call when you can?" Clara didn't call. She left the building, walked right out at 10:30 in the morning, ignoring her assistant's shocked expression and the meeting stacked on her calendar. She drove to Emma's school, signed in at the office as an authorized visitor that Ryan had added to the list over the weekend, and waited in the hallway outside Emma's classroom until lunchtime. When Emma emerged with her classmates, headed toward the cafeteria, she saw Clara and her face lit up like the sun. "Clara, what are you doing here? Are you okay? Daddy said you had an important meeting." "I did. It's over, and I wanted to see you." Clara crouched down to Emma's level, not caring that she was wrinkling her expensive suit or that curious teachers were watching. I wanted to make sure you knew that everything's fine, that you and your dad are not trouble. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time. Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck. I knew it. I told Olivia you weren't going anywhere. She said her mom said you'd probably leave when things got hard, but I said you're not like that. You're brave. Like an astronaut. Clara held this small person who believed in her despite every reason not to, who trusted her with the casual confidence of a child who'd been loved well. Thank you for believing in me. Your lucky socks worked, by the way. I told you they were magic. Emma pulled back, studying Clara's face. You look tired. Did the meeting make you tired? Very tired, but seeing you makes me feel better. Then you should see me more. Maybe you could come to my school concert next week? We're singing songs about spring. I have a solo. Well, it's only 2 lines. But Mrs. Patterson says 2 lines with confidence is better than 10 lines with mumbling. I would love to come to your concert. Text me the details. Emma giggled. I don't have a phone. I'm 6. But Daddy will text you. Clara hugged her once more, then stood and let Emma return to her friends and her normal 6-year-old life. She walked back to her car feeling lighter than she had in hours. The board could scrutinize. Her mother could disapprove. The press could speculate. But Emma believed in her, Ryan believed in her, and increasingly, Clara was starting to believe in herself, not as the Ice Queen CEO, but as a person capable of connection and love, and showing up even when it was hard. The next 3 weeks were grueling in ways Clara hadn't anticipated. The paparazzi became a constant presence. Photographers outside her building, outside Ryan's house, following them to the grocery store and Emma's soccer games. Every moment felt performed, documented, analyzed. Clara hired security for Ryan and Emma after a particularly aggressive photographer tried to get a shot of Emma at school. She paid for it personally, knowing that accepting her help was hard for Ryan's pride, but necessary for Emma's safety. The press coverage ranged from supportive to savage. Think pieces about class and dating in the workplace. Features about single fathers and CEO work-life balance. Tabloid speculation about wedding dates and gold-digging conspiracies. Clara's favorite headline was, From Elevator to Ever After, the Ice Queen's warm-up, which made Ryan laugh so hard he couldn't breathe. Through it all, they maintained their routine. Soccer games on Saturdays, library visits on Sundays, family dinners at Ryan's house during the week, where Clara slowly learned to cook under Ryan's patient instruction. Emma's school concert, where Clara sat in the audience next to Ryan and felt her heart swell with pride when Emma sang her 2 lines with perfect confidence. Clara started leaving work earlier, arriving later, protecting her evenings and weekends with a ferocity that surprised her staff. She'd spent 7 years proving she could outwork everyone, outthink everyone, out-achieve everyone. Now she was learning a different kind of success, the kind measured in Emma's laughter and Ryan's kisses, and quiet mornings making coffee, together, before the world demanded their attention. Ryan started taking night classes in engineering, updating his skills, preparing for a potential return to his original career. Clara pulled strings to get him into an accelerated program, then felt guilty about it until Ryan pointed out that using privilege to help people she loved wasn't wrong. It was just sensible. They had long conversations about power and access and how to use both responsibly. Ryan challenged her assumptions. Clara challenged his. They grew together in ways that surprised them both. Emma started calling Clara my Moon Lady instead of just Clara, which then evolved into my Clara, and eventually, hesitantly, my Clara Mom, said so quietly that Clara almost missed it the first time. Is that okay? Emma asked anxiously. I know you're not my real mom, but you're kind of like a mom. You come to my games and help with homework and teach me about business stuff. And you love Daddy, I can tell. So maybe you could be my Clara Mom? Unless that's weird. Olivia says it's weird, but Olivia says everything is weird. Clara pulled Emma onto her lap, this child who'd somehow become hers despite biology and law and every conventional definition of family. That's not weird, that's wonderful. I would be honored to be your Clara Mom. Good. Because I already told my teacher you were going to be at parent-teacher conferences next week, and it would be embarrassing if you weren't. Ryan, overhearing this exchange, just shook his head and grinned. She's manipulative. She gets that from you. She gets that from being smart enough to recognize when adults need a push, Clara corrected. The second board meeting arrived 3 weeks later, and Clara walked in with the same armor but different energy. She was prepared to fight, but she was also prepared to walk away if necessary. She'd spent 3 weeks learning that her worth wasn't tied to this company, wasn't measured by quarterly earnings or stock prices. She was worth something because Emma thought she was worth something, because Ryan chose her every day, because she was finally learning to be fully human instead of just efficiently successful. Marcus called the meeting to order with an expression that suggested he'd spent 3 weeks hoping this problem would solve itself. Clara, we've spent the past few weeks monitoring the situation. The media attention has been significant. It has, Clara agreed calmly. However, Patricia interjected, and Clara heard something different in her tone. We've also been monitoring the business impact. And I have to admit, Clara, you were right. Our metrics are up across the board. Client acquisition is at a 5-year high. Employee satisfaction scores just came back at record levels. Several executives from other companies have reached out about potential partnerships, citing your authenticity as a factor in their interest. Marcus looked pained. The data suggests that your relationship, while unconventional, has not negatively impacted the company. If anything, it's become an unexpected asset. The narrative of a successful CEO who also prioritizes family and genuine connection apparently resonates with our target demographic. Clara felt something unknot in her chest. So, Patricia said, I move that we formally recognize Clara's relationship as personal business that requires no board oversight, provided it continues to have no negative impact on company operations. All in favor? Every hand went up except Clara's mother's. Motion carries, Marcus said, and he actually sounded relieved. Clara, you're free to continue your relationship without board interference. We trust your judgment. God help us all. That last bit was said with enough dry humor that Clara actually laughed. Thank you. I appreciate the vote of confidence. And for what it's worth, I never intended for my personal life to become a public spectacle. I just wanted to be happy. Are you? Her mother asked suddenly. Happy? Or are you just infatuated with the novelty of slumming? Every board member shifted uncomfortably. Clara looked at her mother and saw, beneath the bitterness, something that might have been genuine curiosity, or fear, or longing for something she'd convinced herself didn't exist. I'm happy, Clara said simply. Happier than I've ever been. Ryan and Emma make me want to be better, not more successful, but better, kinder, more present, more real. That's not infatuation. That's growth. Her mother looked away. I hope you're right. For your sake. The meeting adjourned, and Clara returned to her office feeling lighter than she had in months. She'd won. She'd protected her right to her own life, her own choices, her own happiness, and she'd done it without sacrificing her integrity or her relationship. She called Ryan immediately. It's over. The board approved. Well, not approved exactly, but they're backing off. We're free. Free? Ryan's voice was warm with relief. As in, we can stop hiding from cameras and just live our lives? As in, we can start planning a future without waiting for permission? There was a pause. Then Ryan said, Clara, can I ask you something? Always. Will you marry me? Clara froze. They'd been dating for less than 2 months. This was insane, too fast, too impulsive. Everything she'd spent her life guarding against. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, absolutely yes. Ryan laughed, and it was the sound of pure joy. I know it's fast. I know we're probably crazy, but Emma and I talked about it, and we both agree. When you know, you know. And we know. We want you. Not eventually. Now. We want you to be part of our family officially, if that's what you want too. It's what I want, Clara said, and she was crying, which was unprofessional and messy, and she didn't care at all. It's exactly what I want. Then let's do it. Small ceremony, just us and the people who matter. Emma can be the flower girl. She's already planning her outfit, by the way, even though I didn't tell her I was going to propose today. She said she had a feeling. That kid is terrifying. She really is. She's also currently listening on the extension in her bedroom. Emma, hang up. They heard a click and then Emma's distant voice. I'm going to be a flower girl. This is the best day of my life. Clara and Ryan laughed together, and Clara felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of home, of finally being exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months later, Clara stood in Ryan's backyard under a canopy of late summer leaves, wearing a simple white dress instead of a designer gown, holding Emma's hand on one side and Ryan's on the other. The wedding was small, just Mike and his family, a few of Ryan's friends from work, Clara's assistant who'd become a genuine friend, and Patricia from the board who'd quietly become an ally and mentor. Clara's mother hadn't come, had sent a card that Clara hadn't opened. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. But Sarah was there, in a way. Emma wore her mother's pearl earrings, a gift Ryan had saved for this moment. And the photograph from Emma's nightstand now sat on Clara's nightstand too, because Sarah was part of their family history, part of the love that had made Ryan capable of loving again, part of the foundation they were building on. The ceremony was officiated by Ryan's brother Mike, who'd gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose and took his duties very seriously until Emma heckled him for being too boring. They wrote their own vows. Ryan promised to keep teaching Clara to cook and to never let her take work calls during family dinner. Clara promised to keep showing up, to keep being present, to keep choosing connection over control. Emma insisted on making her own vows, promising to only interrupt their alone time in case of actual emergencies, defining actual emergencies as blood, fire, or really important questions about space. When they kissed, Emma cheered so loudly that the neighbors 3 houses down came out to see what was happening. The reception was equally low-key. Barbecue in the backyard, music playing from someone's phone, kids running around while adults ate and laughed and celebrated. Clara's security detail stayed discreetly in the background because the paparazzi had finally lost interest after 6 months of relatively boring domesticity. Turned out that watching someone go to soccer games and make dinner and live an ordinary life wasn't that compelling after a while. As the sun set and fireflies began to emerge, Clara found herself standing next to the maple tree, watching Ryan teach Emma and her friends some complicated hand-clapping game. Mike came to stand beside her, beer in hand. "You did good," he said. Ryan's been more himself these past few months than he has been since Sarah died. And Emma's got her spark back. You did that. They did it, Clara corrected. They taught me how to be human again, how to stop performing and start living. Yeah, well, you taught them something too. Taught Ryan that it's okay to want more than just survival. Taught Emma that family comes in all different configurations. Taught both of them that love can happen twice, in different ways, and it's not betraying what came before. Mike clinked his beer against Clara's glass of champagne. Welcome to the family. Fair warning, we're loud and we meddle and we have opinions about everything. Sounds perfect, Clara said, and meant it. Later that night, after the guests had left and Emma had finally crashed from too much cake and excitement, Clara and Ryan sat on their front porch watching the stars emerge. Clara had sold her penthouse and moved into Ryan's house because it turned out that square footage mattered less than the people filling the space. They were already planning an addition, a home office for Clara, a bigger bedroom for Emma, maybe eventually a nursery because they'd talked about having a baby together someday when life settled down. You know what's funny, Ryan said, his arm around Clara's shoulders? I spent years thinking my life was over, that I'd had my one shot at happiness, and that was it. I just coast through the rest, taking care of Emma, going through the motions, and then you got stuck in an elevator. Best malfunction ever, Clara said. The maintenance guy who did that inspection should get a bonus. I'll see what I can do. I know someone in management. Ryan laughed and kissed her temple. I love you, Clara Cooper. Clara Cooper. She'd hyphenated professionally, but privately, in moments like this, she was just Cooper, part of this family that had saved her from a life of efficient emptiness. I love you too, both of you, even when Emma wakes us up at 6 a.m. to ask questions about black holes. Especially then. That's how you know it's real, when you're happy to be woken up by space questions. They sat in comfortable silence, and Clara thought about the journey from that elevator to this porch. She'd lost some things. Her mother's approval, some professional relationships, the armor she'd worn for so long it had felt like skin. But she'd gained so much more. A partner who saw her. A daughter who believed in her. A life that felt full instead of just successful. The front door opened and Emma appeared, wearing pajamas covered in stars, looking sleepy and content. "Can't sleep, too happy." "Come here, little star," Ryan said, and Emma climbed into his lap, then reached for Clara's hand. They sat there together, the three of them, watching the night sky and planning their future. Emma wanted to go to the planetarium next weekend. Ryan wanted to try that new Italian restaurant everyone was talking about. Clara wanted to volunteer at Emma's school, maybe start a mentorship program for kids interested in business. Small plans, ordinary plans, the kind of plans that normal families made together. Clara had spent 32 years chasing extraordinary, convinced that was where happiness lived. Turned out happiness lived here, in the ordinary moments, in the daily choice to show up and be present and love the people in front of you with everything you had. "Hey, Clara, Mom," Emma said sleepily. "Yeah, baby?" "I'm really glad you got stuck in that elevator." Clara smiled, holding tight to her family, her home, her hard-won happiness. "Me too, Emma. Me too." And somewhere in the city, an elevator continued its routine journey up and down a glass tower, carrying strangers who didn't know they were one malfunction away from their whole lives changing. Claire hoped they'd be as lucky as she'd been. Lucky enough to panic, lucky enough to be rescued, lucky enough to realize that sometimes you have to get stuck before you can be free. The Ice Queen had finally melted, and what remained was something infinitely better. A woman who knew how to love, how to be loved, and how to build a life that mattered not because it looked impressive on paper, but because it felt real in her heart. A woman who'd learned that true success wasn't about what you achieved, but about who you became in the pursuit. A woman who'd found her way home by first getting lost in a steel box between floors, guided by a voice in the dark that promised she wasn't alone. She never would be again.